Chapter 41:32. Ji Chanchio frowned. What should he do now? Couldn't he even meet her? Why hadn't Hellion Feng acted yet? Wasn't he waiting for them to fall apart by getting such an identity for Su Ruoyu? Otherwise, his father would have arranged for someone to kill Su Ruoyu. After all, Su Ruoyu had harmed him before. His father wouldn't let it go so easily. In less than 2 days, the servants of the Prime Minister's residence found that their young master had a new hobby. He sat in the study and wrote stories. There were all kinds of strange stories. They didn't know what words to use to describe them. In short, these stories could be described in one word. They were tacky, but very attractive. Once they started, they would want to continue reading. Ji Chanchio's followers who helped to organize the stories were very excited every day. The stories written by their young master were more interesting than the stories told by the storytellers in the tea house. After the Prime Minister knew about this, he couldn't help but roll his eyes at Ji Chanchio's study. What a funny brat. But speaking of which, this brat's body seems to be better than a few months ago, especially the recent diagnosis. The doctor said that if he took good care of himself, he wouldn't have a short life. It seemed that it wasn't difficult for him to live a normal life. Thinking of this, the Prime Minister couldn't help but ask Ji Chanchio about this. He walked into the study and read 2 short stories. They were as melodramatic as they could be, but they made people unable to take their eyes off them. They were indeed very suitable for the kind of stories told by the tea house staff. This brat had put in a lot of effort. He was indeed his son. If he wanted something, he had to work hard and think of a way. Even if he couldn't do it openly, he could at least look at other people. Father? The Prime Minister nodded. How have you been recently? Not bad. The Prime Minister didn't beat around the bush with his son and asked his thoughts. Hearing this, Ji Chanchio smiled faintly. It should be the medicine that Princess Ding gave me. It said that she brought it back from Beiwang country. Although it can't cure my illness, it can reduce the pain by half. When the Prime Minister heard this, he felt that it was right to encourage his son to pursue the person he liked. Such a good girl should be matched with his son. The Prime Minister patted Ji Chanchio's shoulder. Kid, perform well. Let others see that not all of Daki's men are like Hellion Feng. The short story is not bad. When it is sent to the tea house, Father will help you publicize it. In Ding Palace, Father has 2 spies that he does not need. Ji Chanchio, thank you, Father. A few days later, Tang did hear about the new stories in the tea house. Even Red Date would whisper a few words to her. It was said that the new stories were very interesting. The system couldn't help but add, Host, it's your cutie. In order to attract you, she's been cooped up at home every day to write stories. She even received the Prime Minister's approval. I didn't tell you before, but I felt that I could only give you a surprise when this happened. Red Date, stop talking. Let's go listen to a story. Sure enough, when Tang's carriage arrived at the tea house, Ji Chanchio's carriage also arrived. The 2 of them nodded at each other and pretended that they weren't familiar with each other. They went to their original small room. Ji Chanchio was a little nervous. He didn't know if the story would catch her eye. The Peak. Chapter 41:33. After listening to the storyteller, Tangguo left the tea house. When she walked out of the small room, she said to Red Date, Today's story is quite fresh. Princess, wasn't this servant right? I don't know who wrote this story, but it is truly wonderful. Just now, this servant took the opportunity to ask. It is said that there will be new stories soon. That's good. Come back tomorrow. After the 2 left, Ji Chanchio came out with his entourage. He naturally heard Tang's words clearly. Young Master is still the best. Even Ding Wangfei said the stories written by Young Master were good. The entourage found a chance to flatter and would not miss it. Ji Chanchio was indeed in a good mood. He leisurely walked out of the tea house and got into the carriage. He said, When I'm free, I can write some short stories. It's a good way to relieve boredom. The entourage had a bad feeling. As expected, after returning to the Fu, Ji Chanchio went into the study to think about new stories. Now, not only did he have to think about it, he also had his entourage go around the capital to find out what happened in the normal families. He also had people gather information about the princes, officials, and nobles' private matters. Writing 2 stories every day was not a simple matter. He had to know more and combine it with what had actually happened. Then he could make it into a complicated and confusing story. He could even make it into a story with Xinxia and ghosts. This way, he could immerse himself in the story and also change the background of the story. There were only a few days until the palace banquet. Su Ruoyu, who had become General Yun's adopted daughter, had become famous in a short period of time. She was not a particularly famous talented girl, but no one would ignore this person. Perhaps because of her identity, Su Ruoyu had made a few good friends. Su Ruoyu always wore a veil when she went out. When people asked, she would say that she had a rash on her face. She was afraid of scaring others, so she wore a veil. Many people were very curious about Su Ruoyu's appearance. There were even people who wanted to see it in advance. Of course, they also wanted Su Ruoyu to make a fool of herself. Read well. Among them were the Su sisters. But this time, when they met Su Ruoyu, not only did they fail, they also made a fool of themselves. Su Ryu didn't forget the people from the Su family who had harmed her. If it weren't for the Su sisters, would she have been in such a sorry state? Her inadvertent instigation not only made the Su sisters turn against each other, but also made the people in the circle feel that the Su sisters were indeed not presentable. Due to the appearance of the Su sisters, Su Ryu became the subject of discussion again. Su Ruoyu's heart was filled with hatred, but she did not show it on the surface. Instead, she secretly memorized the names of these people, especially these new friends of hers. They were also criticizing her in front of her. Because of this, she did not intend to deepen her relationship with them. Even though Su Ryu had changed a lot and displayed some talents from time to time, Princess Lu Guang still didn't like her very much. Su Ryu wasn't sure what had happened to Princess Lu Guang. She only knew that she had drugged Princess Lu Guang and another ugly man. She didn't know if it had succeeded. Now that she saw Princess Lu Guang's glamorous appearance, Su Ruoyu felt bad. She wouldn't directly confront Princess Lu Guang. After all, she was General Yun's adopted daughter. That would be too degrading. But she could secretly sow discord and let the people around her slowly think that Princess Lu Guang was not good. Unexpectedly, Princess Lu Guang did not appear on those occasions later. She came to look for Tanghua and told Tanghua about General Yun's adopted daughter returning to the capital recently. Peak. Chapter 41-34. I feel that there's something strange about her. Princess Lu Guang expressed her thoughts. She sat on the stone bench with her hands on her face as she watched Tanghua practice her swordsmanship. As for what's strange, it's that no matter who provokes her, it doesn't seem to end well. I don't really like her, but I can't find anything wrong with her. It's as if everything is just a coincidence. Some things seem to develop, and those people only have themselves to blame. But I still feel that there's something wrong. After Tanghua finished practicing her swordsmanship, she returned to the side and drank a cup of water. Since Princess Lu Guang feels that she's strange, then don't join in the fun in front of her in the future. I was a little curious at first. Since Sister Gua said that you're not going, then I won't go. Father said that I have to listen to Sister Gua. Princess Lu Guang smiled. She had made so many good friends, but this was the first time her father was satisfied with her playing with Sister Gua. This was something that had never happened before. However, she really liked playing with Sister Gua. In front of Sister Gua, she could say whatever she wanted. She didn't need to care too much. But her father also warned her not to get too close to her cousin. It was really strange. The palace banquet is in 3 days. Sister Gua, let's go to the palace together. Princess Lu Guang came today for this matter. Tanghua agreed. The palace banquet was finally coming. She had been waiting for this day for a long time. The envoy from Beiwang country had already arrived. They used the excuse that the eldest princess and the emperor missed Princess Yuan. But the real reason was to help Tanghua. Helian Feng had already prepared everything that he wanted to do to her. And the other person who was being schemed against was actually Ji Chanqiu. When she heard this news, Tanghua was stunned. This Helian Feng really had a soft spot for scheming against Ji Chanqiu. He wouldn't give up until he killed him. In the original plot, the original owner was schemed against at King Ding's residence. This time, Helian Feng wanted to make it big. He wanted to make sure that there was no room for negotiation. In order to plan this matter, He endured and did not get close to Suruoyu. He did not want anyone to find out that something was wrong and it would affect their reputation. In any case, Suruoyu was now General Yun's adopted daughter. She could not do anything that was too out of line to avoid being discovered. Indeed, Ji Chanchio did not know that he was being schemed against by Hellion Feng. This matter was planned by Hellion Feng's most trusted aide. The spy that the Prime Minister had planted in Prince Ding's residence was not at this level yet. Moreover, the matter of scheming against Tanghua was very important. Only his two confidants knew about it. Even Su Ryu didn't know about it. Su Ryu gave Hellion Feng all kinds of medicine. She might have forgotten that she once gave Hellion Feng a kind of medicine that could make a martial artist faint instantly after taking it. Needless to say, with the medicine in Hellion Feng's hands, Ji Chanchio wouldn't be able to do much. She didn't have any intention of reminding him. How about she beat him at his own game? Since this was a gift from Hellion Feng, she would reluctantly accept it? System. Host, don't be such a dog. Tanghua, I'll give you a chance to reorganize your words. System. Dear host, speaking of which, you two are really fated. Tanghua was thinking about how to perform that day. Taking Ji Chanchio away, calmly, seemed to be too calm. Should she be angry, cold, or in despair? Should she have a mocking expression, scolded Hellion Feng, divorced him, and accepted Hellion Feng's gift in front of everyone? Pete. Chapter 4135. Then it was spread that Hellion Feng, in order to harm her, the Ding Wangfei, did not hesitate to send her a man. Princess Ding divorced Prince Ding in a fit of anger and left with Prince Ding's gift. Just a little more. Right, when this rumor spread, she had to reveal Hellion Feng and Su Ryu's secret to let the world see that Hellion Feng really put in a lot of effort for Su Ryu. It turned out that Hellion Feng murdered Princess Ding to make room for that evil spirit. At that time, who could say that she wasn't at all? For the sake of an evil spirit, he wanted to murder his legally wedded wife. Anyone who heard of it would scold him. Under the system's horrified gaze, Tanghua took out 2 more paper-cut puppets and said sourly, "People who are pampered by their older brother are really different. Whatever you want, you could just take it out from the system space." These paper-cut puppets are piled up in her warehouse. As a system, you've learned to be sour. Little Tongzi, don't you have 2 system underlings? 111 even said that it would install a package for you. That's quite loyal. System, it's all right. 111 has already submitted to my power, and 222 is our little brother. He's very busy every day, and the host always wins without doing anything. That's why her score isn't high, and she doesn't get many points. Poor child. Speaking of which, how is my older brother? Is he happy being a cat? Can he transform into a human form with his current body? According to 111, it's difficult for them to transform into a human form in their current environment. They can only continue to evolve and increase their strength. They probably won't be able to transform even after completing the mission. Don't forget that your brother Wild's poop picker hasn't awakened an ability and can only live for a few decades. So it's like that. That's good too. Who is my older brother's poop picker? Is it a man or a woman? It's a girl. Now, the plot has reached the girl's former pursuer. He's a scumbag who has awakened an ability. He saw that the girl was quite pretty and wanted to take her in as his harem. Of course, the consequences are very tragic. Brother Wild is now helping to take care of that scumbag. No wonder the girl likes cats and dogs. She can eat less, but the cat food must be good. No wonder before she died, she wanted the cat to leave quickly. It's obvious that she treats the cat as family. No wonder the cat had such a strong desire. Dear host, this is only one of the reasons. There's another reason why the cat has such a strong obsession. Tanghua asked curiously why. It doesn't eat cat food. It has always been the poop picker who made the cat food. Since the poop picker died, no one cleaned its poop, stroked its cat, or cooked for it. It thinks that the food stolen from the apocalypse is too disgusting. Tanghua, as expected, it's the thoughts of a small animal. It's a little hard to understand. By the way, Madam Host, there's an additional suitor beside Wild Brother's poop picker. It looks rather sincere. According to 111, If nothing unexpected happens midway, this suitor will most likely win the girl's heart. Even Brother Wild has a good impression of him. This person seems to know some beast language. Now, your Brother Wild's life is much more relaxed. He doesn't have to worry about being shaved bald every day. That's good too. I hope my brother can go to the next world soon. I'm afraid he'll lose his mind if his hair is stroked every day. The system said weakly. Didn't she stroke a certain someone's hair every day? She didn't see him being shaved bald. On this day, the Daki Emperor held a palace banquet. Peak. Chapter 41:36. The palace banquet was actually Daki's own banquet. Only officials of a certain rank were invited, as well as the wives and children of the officials. The appearance of the envoy from Beiwang country was a rather unexpected thing. The emperor wasn't surprised that the envoy from Beiwang country came. News of what happened last time had probably spread to Beiwang country. It was said that the emperor of Beiwang and the princess royal doted on Ding Wang Fei very much. This time, they sent a messenger. Most likely, they had two meanings. One was to show to Qi that it was a warning. The other was to see how Ding Wang Fei was living. The emperor had already told Helian Feng not to embarrass himself on the day of the banquet. Helian Feng agreed on the surface, but in fact, he was even more determined to embarrass Tanghua on the day of the banquet. These few months, the prime minister had been going against him, mostly because of Ji Chanchio. He hated those brothers the most, but they all had strategists around them, so it wasn't as easy to make a move as before. The prime minister was a sly old fox. He knew that the other party was purposely targeting him. Since that was the case, he would make the other party pay the price. Didn't the sly old fox care about his only son? Then he would make Ji Changxiu fall into a perilous situation and see what the sly old fox would do. He could get rid of the burden in his residence and also attack the prime minister. Helian Feng was extremely happy about the arrival of the envoy from Beiwang country. Tang was sat in the carriage and arrived at the entrance of the palace. As expected, she saw Princess Lu Guang waiting there. Thus, the two of them entered together. Helian Feng had already entered the palace. Everyone seemed to be used to him not being with her. No one found it strange. The incident of Su Ruiyu being a demon seemed to have passed. Helian Feng didn't care about those rumors, and no one dared to say anything in front of him. No matter what, this was Prince Ding. They couldn't afford to offend him. They entered the palace and took their seats. Tanghua saw the envoy from Beiwang country sitting in the envoy's seat. There were two familiar faces among them. She searched her memory and smiled more. Weren't they the two trusted ministers of her emperor uncle? Of the two ministers, one was a smiling tiger. No one could tell what he was thinking. The other was very good at inverting right and wrong. It seemed that they wanted to do something big this time. How big they wanted to do was none of her business. Anyway, she was going to divorce Helian Feng tonight and take his present with her. System, you're still saying out a dog? TSK, 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 what a dog. The emissary group frequently looked at Tanghua's position. Tanghua nodded to them, and they no longer looked at her. According to the normal procedure, they would still have the opportunity to meet after the palace banquet. However, the situation this time was special. After the palace banquet, they would probably return together. At the start of the banquet, the Emperor of Great Qi appeared. After exchanging greetings with everyone, it was time for everyone to present their gifts. Among them, Helian Feng's gift was the most outstanding. It was actually another medicine formula. Previously, Helian Feng had taken out anti-inflammatory drugs and hemostatic drugs, which were very precious in Daki. This time, the formula of the medicine was still shocking. It was actually a miraculous medicine for treating typhoid. Helian Feng was in the limelight and received the emperor's praise. In such an environment, once one contracted typhoid fever, it was very easy to die. Now that this prescription had appeared, even though it could not guarantee a 100% cure, it did increase the survival rate of typhoid fever. Vertex. Chapter 41:37. After an examination by the imperial physicians, they discovered that the herbs required for this recipe were all commonly seen. In other words, the cost was very low and ordinary people could use it. Once this recipe was popularized throughout Daki, The Daki Emperor's reputation as a wise ruler would be indisputable. After the presentation of the gifts, it was time for the real banquet. Everyone could eat while watching the performances. They were even allowed to walk around the palace. Of course, the permitted area was not much, but it was enough for everyone to see. This was an extremely rare opportunity. Princess Lu Guang originally wanted to take Tanghua for a walk around. Even though she was a princess, she could not enter the palace as she pleased. Even if she could, it was rare for her to have a look around. Then, I won't go either. Princess Lu Guang felt that Tanghua did not seem to have many friends. Although she wanted to take a look, she decided to stay by Tanghua's side to keep her company. Dear host, there's a problem with the newly added fruit wine. It was drugged by Hellion Feng's people. Hearing the system's words, Tanghua poured herself a glass of fruit wine and drank it. Sure enough, as soon as she drank it, she felt dizzy, as if she could not handle the alcohol. Red Date immediately noticed that Tanghua's cheeks were a little red. She recalled Tanghua's instructions and told Red Date about Hellion Feng's plan. She was both distressed and angry about Tanghua's plan to beat them at their own game. But this plan had to be carried out. In the princess's words, they had to beat Hellion Feng to the ground. What's wrong, princess? Hellion Feng, who had never cared much about Tanghua, suddenly walked to her side and stared at her red cheeks. Are you drunk? Without waiting for Tanghua to answer, he called 2 palace maids over. Princess is a little drunk. Help her to rest for a while. Tanghua didn't refuse, and Red Jujube followed her loyally, carefully supporting her. Princess Lu Guang also followed along. Only when Tanghua was sent to the room and learned that this place was for drunken guests did she feel relieved and leave. To read, Red Jujube had to stay by Tanghua's side to take care of her. So the 2 palace maids tried to get close to her. Seeing that she was tired, they even poured water for her. Red Date knew that there was something wrong with the water, so he pretended to drink it. In fact, he spat it out on a handkerchief that he had prepared beforehand. Under the anticipation of the 2 palace maids, Red Date fell asleep. She was a martial artist and an expert. Of course, she knew that when one was asleep, one's breathing was very long. The 2 palace maids checked and found that there was no problem. Then they sneaked out. Not long after, Red Date heard movement coming from the window. Someone jumped in from there. From the sound of the person's footsteps, it was clear that the person's martial arts skills were not bad. He was going straight for Tanghua. Red Date was very anxious, but she did not reveal anything. This was what the princess had told her from the beginning. Everything was under the princess's control. She was incomparably glad that the princess had secretly planted someone by Hellion Feng's side. Otherwise, she wouldn't have known that the other party had such vicious thoughts. Since Tanghua had planted someone and how, Red Date did not think about it at all. In her opinion, Tanghua was resourceful, smart, and capable. She was a powerful woman. Was there a need to inform her when her master was doing something like this? Perhaps, when the princess came to the Qi, she brought someone else with her. When the person left through the window again, Red Date woke up and looked at the bed. Sure enough, Tanghua was gone. Just as your highness expected, they took the shoe with them. Red Date walked to the window and looked at the 2 embroidered shoes' footprints on the window. Her face turned ugly. Did they want to make it look like the princess ran out on her own? Hellion Feng, that bastard, vicious and shameless. The Peak. Chapter 41:38. Tanghua was carried by someone and taken to another room. That person threw her onto the bed and left through the window. After the person left, she opened her eyes. Indeed, there was a handsome man lying beside her. The handsome prime minister's son was looking at her with his eyes wide open and his face flushed red. There was no desire in his eyes, only anger. Let's go. Ji Chanchio squeezed out these 2 words from between his teeth. He didn't know how he fell for it. He was so guarded. Hellion Feng was too strange. But when he thought of Su Ruoyu, he didn't find it strange. He could only blame himself for underestimating Su Ruoyu's ability. Hellion Feng being able to scheme against him without anyone noticing most likely had something to do with Su Ruoyu. Prime Minister's son, are you drugged? Ji Chanxio. Since you know, why are you still talking so much nonsense? Can't you see that he's in pain? Tang Hua glanced at the blanket covering Ji Changxiu and lifted it up. She found that he had tied her hands and feet with strips of cloth. Horror appeared on Ji Changxiu's cold face. He was thinking, could it be that she was drugged as well? This was bad. He could control himself, but others might not be able to. Tang was sized Ji Changxiu up. That burning gaze made Ji Changxiu even more certain that she was drugged. She wasn't like this usually. He didn't know what kind of strange drug Hellion Feng had used. He was too careless. He didn't expect that Hellion Feng would harm both of them. Actually, Hellion Feng was able to succeed because of his and Su Ryu's ability and the halo around them. Compared to Ji Changxiu and the Prime Minister, the palace was Hellion Feng's home. It was hard to guard against him when he did something. Tang Hua was still sizing him up. Ji Changxiu closed his eyes. Ding, Princess Consort, don't be rash. If this happens, Changxiu's life will be worthless. It won't be good for you. Ji Changxiu already knew what would happen to the two of them if this happened. Perhaps he wouldn't die, but this was something that his father had fought for with his life. As for this Princess Yuan, she would be scolded by the citizens of Daqi and Beiwang country. She would suffer more than death. Ding Wangfei, cover this one with a blanket. Since you have the strength to lift the blanket, why don't you jump out of the window? System. Host, hurry up and cover yourself. I'm shy. Hurry up. You're not even married yet, and you're already lifting my blanket. People in ancient times are more reserved and disciplined. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Tang Hua covered Ji Changxiu with a blanket again. She heard him exhale heavily, as if he had just overcome some kind of disaster. Tang Hua didn't climb out. Instead, she sat on a chair beside the bed. Is Princess Ding's body weak? Ji Changxiu looked at Tang Hua's footsteps. They were indeed a little messy. It was probably caused by the Chinese medicine. He was a little anxious. Unfortunately, after he was hit, everything that could notify people outside had been taken away by the other party. Tang Hua rested her chin on her hand and looked at Ji Changxiu's flushed but cold face. Not bad. Since that's fine, let's get out. Going out like this, I'm a little unwilling. Ji Changxiu. When Tang Hua said this, Ji Changxiu felt that he had heard a second meaning. If it wasn't for his face being red, he would have been seen as abnormal. Peak. Chapter 41:39. The enemy is in the dark while we are in the light. If we want to take revenge, we have to think about it at length. Ji Changxiu persuaded. But I am an impatient person. I can't wait. Tang Hua stroked the hair that fell by her ear and said faintly, there are many people tonight. Let's take revenge tonight. Ji Changxiu's heart spun a few times. Now that he had calmed down, he realized that although Tang Hua's situation was a little strange, it didn't seem like she had been drugged. Actually, those two palace maids did pour a cup of water for Tang Hua. It was that kind of medicine. However, she didn't drink this kind of medicine. Tonight's matter, was it within Princess Ding's expectations? Ji Changxiu understood. No wonder she was so calm. He felt a little sour in his heart. If everything went according to her plan, then wouldn't she be watching her husband plot against her step by step? The marriage alliance wasn't proposed by her, but by Dachi. It wasn't someone who forced Prince Ding, but he himself agreed. Why did it seem like she had become a heinous person in Prince Ding's eyes? Perhaps this was because she didn't enter the other party's eyes and blocked his path. No matter what, he had to get rid of her. Tang Hua admitted, Prime Minister's son doesn't need to do anything. Just suffer for a while and lie there obediently. It will be fine in a while. Ji Changxiu felt that these words were strange. What did she mean by lying there obediently and it will be fine in a while? No matter how he heard it, it didn't sound right. Just as Tang Hua finished speaking, the door was pushed open. Ji Changxiu looked at the door a little nervously, but saw an unfamiliar girl dressed as a palace maid. Princess, are you all right? The palace maid hurriedly walked to Tang Hua's side. Tang Hua shook her head. I'm fine. Have they all been caught? They have all been caught. Princess, don't worry. Not a single one escaped. This time, Hellion Feng is finished. This palace maid was Red Date's younger sister, Qing Zhao. Ji Changxiu didn't recognize her, but he understood that she was one of Tang Hua's people and felt relieved. After Qing Zhao came in, she didn't go out. She quietly stood beside Tanghua without saying a word, as if she was invisible. For the time it took to brew 2 cups of tea, the master and servant did not speak. The room was extremely quiet. Even Ji Chanxio felt that the heat in his body seemed to have encountered something cool, and he didn't feel as uncomfortable anymore. He simply closed his eyes and waited for what would happen next. There was nothing he could do now. "Prime Minister's son, are you feeling unwell?" When he heard Tanghua's words, Ji Chanxio replied without opening his eyes, "It's fine. I can still endure it." After he was hit earlier, he had already made up his mind that no matter who came later, no one was allowed to get close to him. The trauma that Su Ryu had left on him was still there. He had already thought it through. If he really couldn't resist, he would bite his tongue and commit suicide. It was better than being humiliated and then having his father slander him. If he died because of this, then the person who plotted against him would not only gain nothing, but would also embarrass the emperor, and his father would not be criticized because of this. "That's good. Just now I saw that you tied yourself up very tightly. Your hands are all bruised. This should be caused by the lack of blood circulation. Are you really all right?" It was clearly not a good situation, but Ji Chanxio's heart felt warm. Didn't Ding Wangfei say that it would be fine in a while? I don't think it will take long for the people outside to arrive. The two did not speak again. The system reminded Tanghua that a large group of people was coming over. Of course, they were deliberately led here. This room was not for the guests from outside the palace to rest. It was for the people who were tired from walking to rest and drink tea. The Peak. Chapter 4140. Therefore, it wasn't strange for her to bring someone here and push open the door. But under normal circumstances, they would come here during the day and would rarely come at night. Hearing the messy footsteps outside, Ji Chanxio's heart tightened. He didn't know what kind of show she had arranged. Although he didn't know the details, he wasn't worried at all. It was really strange. The sound of chatter and laughter accompanied the sound of footsteps. The door was pushed open. Just as it was pushed open, someone screamed as if they saw something they shouldn't see. The people outside were very curious about what was inside the room. Su Ryu was also there. Su Ryu looked at the room and thought, could it be that someone was having an affair in the room and was discovered? She looked at the people around her. They were all famous young ladies and young masters in the capital. If today's matter was exposed, then it would be a big matter. Because of the rash, Su Ryu had been wearing a veil. She didn't plan to take off her veil until the very end. Therefore, no one had discovered that the current Yin Nua looked exactly the same as the previous Su Ryu, except that there was an additional mole on her face. Because of her magnanimous actions, no one suspected anything. "What's inside? Why are you making such a fuss?" Su Ryu scanned the room and found that all the familiar faces were here. She had paid special attention to Tanghua. Excluding the people who didn't come, wasn't there only one Tanghua left? Previously, Tanghua seemed to be unable to hold her liquor and was sent to rest by Hellion Feng's 2 palace maids. Could it be that she was faking her inability to hold her liquor? It was Hellion Feng who neglected her and wasn't willing to touch her. So she couldn't stand the loneliness and had an affair? Su Ruoyu's mind filled in a drama, and her heart was filled with disdain. She felt that the high and mighty image of Ding Wangfei instantly collapsed in her heart. This kind of person who couldn't stand the loneliness and made Hellion Feng wear a green hat, was she worthy of being Ding Wangfei? Originally, she thought that she didn't care about this Ding Wangfei. Since the other party didn't cherish it, then she wouldn't be polite. Su Ruoyu hurriedly squeezed in. She wanted to take a good look at Tanghua and the wild man's ugly behavior. She never thought that she would see Tanghua dressed properly and sitting on a chair with an unfamiliar face standing behind her. The master and servant didn't say a word. They didn't move at all, as if they were made of wood. Even the person who had screamed earlier realized that something was wrong. Of course, everyone also saw that there was a person lying on the bed. When they saw that person's face, they were in an uproar. Isn't that the Prime Minister's son? The Prime Minister's son's expression didn't look right. Ding Wangfei, Prime Minister's son, what are you doing? Those who knew Tanghua and Ji Chanxio couldn't help but voice their opinions. Although they didn't do anything wrong, it was taboo. If it weren't for Qing Zhao, They wouldn't have been able to stop themselves from thinking about other things. But the situation in front of them was obviously not right. Tangwa finally raised her head and swept her gaze across everyone's faces. Her gaze finally landed on the eldest prince's face. Eldest sister-in-law, I'll have to trouble you to invite the emperor, the prime minister, and the envoys from Beiwang country over. That's right, Prince Ting should also come over. This matter isn't a big deal, but it isn't a small one either. The eldest princess consort felt that something was wrong. But seeing the situation, she still nodded and turned to invite them over. After a while, the emperor's arrival was announced. Everyone moved aside and bowed. Tangwa didn't stand up. She was still sitting on that chair, and Qing Zhao didn't move either. The emperor was still displeased when he saw this. But when he saw Ji Changqiu on the bed, his expression changed. The peak. Chapter 41-41. The Prime Minister saw Ji Changqiu first and almost jumped up. His son was schemed against again. Which bastard schemed against him? Hellion Feng? The Prime Minister glared fiercely at Hellion Feng, gritting his teeth so hard that the sound of grinding could be heard. His colleagues beside him all heard it and hurriedly moved away. Changqiu, how are you? The Prime Minister could tell that something was wrong with the situation. The other party's scheme seemed to have failed for some reason. His son seemed to have fallen into the trap, but this princess consort Ding didn't. Although he was very happy that this princess consort Ding would be his daughter-in-law in the future, he couldn't have such a relationship at this time. He couldn't help but look at Tangwa again. He felt that this woman was worthy of his son's fancy. She was just so capable. With such a smart woman, he didn't have to worry that his son would be bullied for the rest of his life. Acting was the most basic skill of a prime minister. The prime minister turned from anger to a crying old father. He was sad, pained, and angry. With red eyes, he rushed to the side of the bed and lifted the blanket. What he saw was Ji Changqiu's hands that were tied up until they turned purple. Changqiu, how are you? Are you feeling unwell? Don't be afraid. Father is here. The originally serious scene was instantly dispelled by the prime minister's actions. Your hands are bruised. I don't know if you'll become disabled. Father will help you untie it immediately. The prime minister's actions were clumsy. Ji Changqiu had tied himself up too tightly with a cloth strip. There were many knots in the middle. It was easy to tie himself up, but difficult to untie. Read. Qing Zhao, go and help. If this continues, the prime minister's son will be disabled. Qing Zhao walked over, and the prime minister hurriedly moved aside. Qing Zhao grabbed the cloth strip, and it broke into pieces. Such a ferocious look shocked everyone. With Qing Zhao's actions, everyone was even more certain that nothing had happened in the room tonight. Then they couldn't help but guess. Could it be that Qing Zhao had tied up the prime minister's son? Changqiu, what happened? The prime minister asked. Ji Changqiu frowned and moved his hands. Father, I was knocked out and brought here. I was then drugged. At that time, I was the only one in the room. I was afraid that I would lose my innocence, so I tied myself up. In his heart, he was still thinking that if someone forced him, he would bite his tongue and commit suicide. Ji Changqiu's cold and cheerless appearance was indeed pitiful. Other things aside, the prime minister's son's appearance was definitely top-notch. If it weren't for his illness, who knew how many girls would be willing to marry him? When they heard him say that he wanted to protect his innocence, no one actually felt that it was a sense of peace. After I tied myself up, the door was pushed open again. I saw a man in black carrying a woman in. Later on, they found out that this was Ding Wangfei. Luckily, Princess Ding was still conscious. After that person left, she moved over to sit. Not long after, Princess Ding's maidservant Qing Zhao came over. After that, many people came to this room. Ding Wangfei, may I ask if the matter is like this? The prime minister asked. Tangwa said, that is indeed the case. Her voice was a little weak and cold, which gave people a bad feeling. She just sat there and didn't move at all. Even when the emperor came, she didn't show any expression. Hellion Feng stood behind the emperor and pursed his lips tightly. He was thinking that such a good opportunity had actually failed. Surui was also very disappointed. Was she actually framed by someone? The peak. Chapter 41-42. Someone, Go and investigate who dared to frame Princess Ding and the Prime Minister's son. Of course, the Emperor didn't believe that these two people would be together. It was obvious that someone wanted to frame them. When he said this, he even looked deeply at Hellion Feng. So troublesome. He actually had such an idea. It was fine if he succeeded. Now that he didn't succeed, it was best not to leave any evidence that could be used against him. Otherwise, he didn't know how to clean up the mess. No need. Tang was suddenly spoke up and attracted everyone's attention. The Emperor was stunned, and he didn't understand. The other people were thinking, could it be that Princess Ding had a guilty conscience? Did she really have something with the Prime Minister's son? I've already investigated everything clearly. Today, I invited His Majesty, the Prime Minister, and Prince Ding over to resolve this matter. Tangwa raised her eyes, and her gaze landed on Hellion Feng. I really want to ask Prince Ding a question. Everyone's heart tightened. Something must have happened. What question couldn't be asked behind closed doors? Why did it have to be asked here? Everyone's gossiping fire was already burning fiercely. With so many people, the Emperor couldn't silence them after hearing this secret. It was a rare opportunity, so they must listen. Hellion Feng didn't quite understand, but he still asked, Princess Consort, are you still drunk? We have been married for 4 years, and Prince Ding actually doesn't know. I won't get drunk even after 1,000 cups. No matter how strong the wine is, it is all water to me. Tang herself was indeed not drunk. The original owner also wasn't drunk, so she wasn't lying. This matter was known to everyone in Beiwang country who was familiar with her. Hellion Feng's heart skipped a beat. He felt that something was going to happen tonight. Prince Ding, at first, I thought you were avoiding me because you were afraid of my identity. A few months ago, I finally understood that you didn't see my wallpaper because there was a problem with your body. At that time, I wanted to ask you, since you were sick, why did you agree to the political marriage? Since you were sick, why did countless people slander me in these 3 years, but you still stood there and watched coldly, allowing me to take the blame for you? A few months ago, you found a woman who could help you recover. It was a pity that she was a demon in everyone's eyes. You being able to recover was because of that demon's methods. Later on, that demon was burned at the stake, and this matter was temporarily put aside. However, I never would have thought that you wanted my life. What I never would have thought, even more, was that you wanted my life to make room for the demon. So, Prince Ding, a wife who has been married to you for 4 years actually can't compare to a demon who can make you a man, right? In order to make room for this demon, you really put in a lot of effort. Hellion Feng didn't know how to describe his expression. How could this be? How did she know so much? Who told her? He had planned everything so carefully. To be safe, he didn't even tell you about what had happened today. Only his 2 trusted aides knew that the people in the palace who were doing things did not know that he was the one behind all this. Your Highness, you're really drunk. Hellion Feng sensed everyone's strange gazes on him and the Emperor's unsightly expression, so he pretended to be righteous. The Emperor's heart was also very flustered. This matter did not seem to be quite right, and he could not hide it any longer. He saw that Tangwa was so calm. Most likely, she had some evidence. There was also the emissary group. Unexpectedly, no one stood out to speak, as if they were calmly observing this matter. His heart jumped. Could it be that they had already communicated beforehand? Everything that Old Third did was carried out under their noses, and they were just waiting for this to happen? Thinking of this, the Emperor's vision turned black. Qing Zhao, bring them in. Tangwa turned around to look at the Prime Minister. May your Majesty please arrange for 2 people to bring my personal maid. Red date, over. She's still waiting over there. I remember that the person who brought me over even specially used my shoes to leave 2 shoe prints on the window. Prince Ding, you're so thoughtful. Su Ruyu didn't dare to utter a word. She stood silently in the crowd, not saying a word. When everyone was brought in, Hellion Feng looked at those people and almost fainted. Among these people, not only were there people who were involved in everything, there were also his 2 trusted aides. He widened his eyes. He didn't understand why his 2 trusted aides would betray him. Tangwa gently pursed her lips. Hellion Feng's trusted aides naturally wouldn't betray him. But what if his trusted aides had been replaced by the puppet, paper cut from the beginning? The apex. Chapter 41-43. Tang Guo was still sitting on the chair, waiting for Red Date to come over. She turned around to look at Ji Changxiu, who was sitting on the bed with a red face and bruises on his hands. Prime Minister's son doesn't look well. I wonder if the imperial physician is here yet? Tang Guo was still very rude. Daki's emperor was unhappy about this. However, at this time, it was obvious that something was wrong, so he didn't dare to blame her. The trouble that his third son caused today couldn't be solved easily. If he didn't care about his image, he would have gritted his teeth and scolded Hellion Feng. He already understood what was going on. It was Hellion Feng's doing. He was caught red-handed. Even if he knew what the result was, he could only pretend that he was busy and didn't know. He was sullen in his heart. If Prime Minister's son doesn't mind, you can use the physician we brought. In terms of medical skills, I can guarantee that they are not inferior to Daki's imperial physicians. The person who spoke was the representative of the envoy, Hao Qi. He was eloquent and always had a friendly smile on his face. The emperor saw that Ji Changxiu was about to faint at any time and the prime minister's cold expression, so he didn't stop this. His third son was an idiot. Of all people, why did he have to mess with the prime minister's precious child? This old man only had one son. If something really happened to him, wouldn't he fight him to the death? Although the prime minister's occasional words were infuriating, compared to some prosperous families, a prime minister with only one son was more reassuring. This prime minister didn't have any intention of remarrying, so there was no need to be too afraid. Idiot, his third son was an idiot. It was good to mess with the imperial tutor's residence. Recently, the imperial tutor's residence was extremely arrogant. Why did he have to mess with the prime minister? It was Tang Guo's idea for the envoy to bring the physician over. She had already expected that Ji Changxiu would have some problems with his body after being drugged. The prime minister saw that there was a physician to treat his son and was slightly relieved. His gaze towards Hellion Feng became more and more unfriendly. Today, he wanted to see how Prince Ding would explain himself. Finally, Red Date arrived. Red Date walked directly behind Tang Guo. She was completely unharmed and did not look like she had been drugged. Hellion Feng and the two palace maids' faces darkened. Looks like everyone is here. Then let's start with you guys. Tell me how this good husband of mine in name wants my life. Tang Guo pointed at Hellion Feng's two trusted aides. Hellion Feng glared at his two trusted aides. If they were really his trusted aides, they might have already understood that Hellion Feng wanted them to commit suicide. However, this was all arranged by Tang Guo in advance. They ignored Hellion Feng's meaningful glance and knelt on the ground with a thump, telling him how Hellion Feng had arranged for them to frame Tang Guo. Master said that this move will not only prevent Ji Changxiu from making a comeback, but it will also remove the princess consort and make room for Miss Su. Su Ruoyu didn't die. Someone grasped this crucial point. The person who asked was naturally not the princess. If they asked something at this time, it would be easy for the emperor to bear a grudge. Now that things were more or less set in stone, why did they have to do something unnecessary? They might as well watch how Hellion Feng died. The person who asked was Prince Zhong. His expression changed. He thought that the evildoer Su Ryu had already been burned to death. He didn't expect Hellion Feng to actually protect her. If that was the case, wouldn't Hellion Feng be disobeying in public and committing the crime of being a monarch? Peak. Chapter 41-44. She didn't die. Miss Su had all kinds of accidents in the past, and her reputation was almost ruined. Master was worried that he didn't have an excuse to give her another chance. Taking advantage of the people outside, wanting Miss Su's life, Master thought about it and changed her appearance. With a good identity, there wouldn't be any obstacles when she enters Ding Wangfei in the future. When the emperor heard the confidant's big words, he wanted to pull out a knife and cut off his head. Old Third, that idiot, how did he raise the people around him? He actually dared to keep such a disloyal person as a confidant. Prince Zhong didn't care about this. He continued to ask. In his heart, he was thinking that since Su Ruoyu was still alive and it was Hellion Feng who did it, The hatred in his heart was shared with Hellion Feng. If Su Ruoyu was really protected by Hellion Feng and her identity was changed, he couldn't help but wonder how much his good imperial brother knew about this matter. Prince Zhong couldn't help but look at the Emperor of Deqi. Seeing the slight embarrassment on his face, he understood. His good imperial brother knew about this matter. As expected, they were father and son. Since it's like this, then what about Su Ruoyu? Prince Zhong continued to ask. Since this was what Ding Wangfei wanted, then if everyone wanted to know, then he would ask. It could be considered a small help to Ding Wangfei. Hellion Feng's confidant spoke again. Su Ruoyu is the current General Yun's adopted daughter, Yuna. When these words fell, everyone was in an uproar. Yun knew all. Was Su Ruoyu? Everyone quickly found Su Ruoyu in the crowd. Seeing that she was still wearing a veil, their eyes were filled with inquiry and some realization. No wonder this Yin Nuo wore a veil when she appeared. She even said that she had a rash on her face and scared others, so she wore a veil to hide her ugliness. Even so, there were very few people in the capital who made a fuss about Su Ruoyu's appearance. It was mainly because Su Ruoyu, who had returned, knew how to conduct herself. Occasionally, she would show her talent in a low-key manner. It really made people forget what she looked like. Moreover, Su Ruoyu's figure wasn't bad. Many people guessed that she shouldn't be ugly. Su Ruoyu saw that everyone was looking at her, and her heart panicked. However, she acted calm on the surface. Don't slander me. I'm not Su Ruoyu. I grew up in the border. It was father's kindness to adopt me. Her soft and gentle voice made people feel a little puzzled. Many of the people present had seen Su Ryu and heard her speak. Judging from her figure, Yin Nuo was much thinner than Su Ruoyu. She behaved well and was much better than Su Ruoyu. Prince Zhong was also a wily old fox, so how could he be intimidated by Su Ruo's words? He immediately asked, You grew up at the border, so let me ask you, what is the most common plant at the border? What kind of food do the people at the border usually eat? What's the weather like at the border all year round? Su Ryu couldn't say a word after hearing the three most common questions. She stuttered for a long time and couldn't say anything. In the end, she said very softly, My body has been weak since I was young, so I rarely go out. No one believed him. Even if he rarely went out, he should at least know the weather, right? All right, then let me ask you a question. Since you were raised in a boudoir since you were young, have you ever seen the gardenia flowers at the border? How are the flowers blooming in this season? Do you usually instruct the maidservants to prepare some for you in a room? Or do you have some in the courtyard? Don't think that these questions were simple. People who hadn't lived at the border wouldn't know common knowledge. Every place would be suitable for different plants to grow because of the difference in water, soil, and climate. Peak. Chapter 41-45. Su Ryu's heart was spinning in circles as countless thoughts spun around in her head. When Prince Zhong asked her about gardenia flowers, he obviously treated her as an ordinary girl. If an ordinary girl heard Prince Zhong mention gardenia flowers, she would definitely be impatient and say that she had seen gardenia flowers before. In fact, she guessed that there were no gardenia flowers at the border. In such a chaotic place, no one would be in a mood to take care of flowers and plants. Su Ryu did not panic and replied confidently. Prince Zhong probably remembered wrongly. How could there be gardenia flowers at the border? Ha. Prince Zhong stroked his beard and laughed when he heard that. Hellion Feng's face was already pale. He did not know if these people did it on purpose, but he could not give Su Ryu any hint. Father, what are you laughing at? Princess Lu Guang stood beside Prince Zhong and looked at Su Ryu. So this Yin Nuo was Su Ryu. No wonder she felt uncomfortable at first sight. No wonder Sister Gua told her to stay away. Father would not lie to her. It was not wrong to let her walk around with Sister Gua. Sister Gua was such a good girl. She really did not know why her cousin did not like her and even wanted to kill her. Sister Gua was smart and a princess with a high status. Otherwise, her innocence would have been sullied without anyone noticing. Father, laugh at her ignorance. Laugh at her short-sightedness. Laugh at her thinking that we are all fools. Prince Zhong patted Princess Lu Guang's head. Father will tell Lu Guang that there is only one kind of flower at the border. That place is most suitable for gardenia flowers. They are everywhere. As long as there is soil, you can see gardenia flowers. Especially in summer, the fragrance of gardenia flowers will spread throughout the entire border. Legend has it that the soldiers at the border nourished the flowers with their flesh and blood. Every household at the border will plant them. Tsuruyu almost fainted when she heard that. When she went to the border, it was almost winter. How could she see gardenia flowers? Did Prince Zhong and his daughter have a grudge against her? Do you have anything else to say? If not, why don't you take off your veil and let people know? Prince Zhong continued to add fuel to the fire. Tsuruyu didn't want to, but the person beside her pulled off her veil, revealing Tsuruyu's face. Tsuruyu was still quibbling. I'm not Tsuruyu. She's indeed not Tsuruyu. Helian Feng also spoke up for Tsuruyu. He walked in front of Tsuruyu and looked at the mole under her eye. I remember clearly that Tsuruyu doesn't have a mole here. Tangwa couldn't help but laugh out loud, attracting everyone's attention. She didn't keep them in suspense and said, Miss Su, do you think that everyone is a fool? Adding a mole to one's face only required a tattoo. If Miss Su still wants to quibble, I don't mind asking a doctor to help you wash that mole off your face. Helian Feng's expression instantly became a bit awkward. His gaze towards Tangwa was very unfriendly. Wang Fei, what exactly do you want to do? I should be the one asking Prince Ding this question. Prince Ding, what exactly do you want to do? You want my life just to make room for Tsuruyu? Helian Feng looked at the two confidants and said, Wang Fu, those two people are not this prince's confidants at all. They are fakes. Is it real or fake? Prince Ding, do you want to see if there's a human skin mask on their faces? When Prince Zhong heard that, he felt that his part was here again. Chapter 41-46. Your Majesty, why don't we get someone to check their identities? When the Emperor heard this, he could only agree. There was no turning back for today's matter. The emissary group from Beiwang country didn't do anything about this matter. It could be seen that they were well prepared. Admit defeat. After checking their identities, Helian Feng couldn't quibble anymore. No matter how he checked, these two people were his trusted aides. I once heard that Prince Ding was an indomitable and brave man. Therefore, when I heard that Daki and Beiwang country were going to have a marriage alliance, I agreed to this matter. I did this willingly and can't blame anyone else. However, the truth is that Prince Ding was sick and hid it from me. Later on, because Prince Ding found someone who could cure you, you couldn't wait to get rid of me. You have disappointed me too much. Not only did you want to get rid of me, but you also wanted to humiliate me and humiliate my Beiwang country. Have you ever thought that I am still the princess of Beiwang country? If you really had your way, how many people would my Beiwang country become a joke? Tangwa's voice turned cold. Prince Ding, you keep mentioning this matter. Are you trying to destroy the friendly relationship between Daki and Beiwang country? You don't care about me and my Beiwang country. You want to use me to frame Beiwang country and ruin its reputation. What are your intentions? Helian Feng didn't expect such a huge accusation to be placed on him. The Emperor wasn't surprised. After all, the emissary group didn't do anything. Weren't they waiting for this moment? Daki's Emperor, since the matter has been investigated clearly, we would like to ask you on behalf of His Majesty. What is the meaning of Prince Ding's actions? Hao Qi retracted his smiling face and became solemn. Daki's Emperor, from the very beginning, you guys were not sincere in making friends with us. You hid the fact that Prince Ding is a disabled person from us. If Prince Ding was considerate, we would let it go. However, we heard that Princess Yuan has been staying alone in her courtyard for the past 4 years. Every year, she would not meet Prince Ding more than 3 times. Doesn't this prove that Prince Ding looks down on our Beiwang country and our princess and wants our princess to be a decoration in his residence? Emperor of Dachi, you should know that Princess Yuan is the most honorable princess of Beiwang country and not just a decoration like you think. Secondly, Prince Ding actually wanted to murder Princess Yuan for a woman who could make him a man. He even used such a despicable method. Emperor of Daki, I believe that you are unaware of this matter. Hao Qi said, because I don't believe that the Emperor of Dachi would make such a stupid decision. Daki Emperor, however, since it has already happened, you still need to give us an explanation. Of course, this matter is not urgent. First, we would like to hear how Princess Yuan intends to resolve this matter. After all of our observations, we all understand that Daki is not suitable for Princess Yuan's life. Our honorable Princess Yuan deserves the best treatment, not to be ignored and trampled on like this. Hao Qi's gaze landed on Tanghua. Princess Yuan, what do you think of Prince Ding? This time, Tanghua stood up and looked straight at Hellion Feng. Since Prince Ding is so heartless and wants to harm my life, I really don't dare to stay in Daki's territory. Therefore, I have decided to divorce him today. Tanghua took out a letter of divorce that she had prepared long ago from her sleeve and threw it directly at Hellion Feng's face. Peek. Chapter 41-47. Hellion Feng had some skills and quickly received the letter. Looking at the content of the letter, his expression turned ugly, and he wanted to say that he would not allow it. Tanghua sneered, I'm just informing you. You don't have the right to refuse. Prince Ding, what you have done is not over yet. I have always valued the friendship between our two countries, but Prince Ding and I are not of the same mind. After I leave, I still hope that the relationship between our two countries can be amicable. I believe that other than Prince Ding, everyone else thinks the same. Since Princess Yuan has made a decision, this is also our Beiwang country's intention. It is already very late today. Daki's Emperor, there are some things that we can discuss in detail tomorrow. How about it? Hao Qi said with a fake smile. Things are going too smoothly. Princess Yuan was too awesome and had all kinds of evidence. This time, Daki did not dare to say anything. Men, throw Prince Ding and Su Ruiyu into the imperial prison. The emperor was so angry that he really wanted to lock them up and behead them. After leaving the palace, Tanghua did not return to Prince Ding's residence. She was no longer Princess Ding. She was followed by a large group of envoys. Even if the emperor sealed the news today, it was impossible. A night of fermenting was enough to make Hellion Feng a sinner of Daki. Sure enough, when the sun rose the next day, the entire capital knew about what Hellion Feng had done. Hellion Feng's image had already fallen. Now, they heard that he wanted to kill Tanghua because of a demon. Everyone felt that Su Ruiyu was indeed a demon. Countless people wrote blood letters saying that Su Ruiyu must be eliminated. Otherwise, it would endanger Daki. Because of Su Ruiyu, Beiwang country and Daki almost became enemies with them. They did not know what would happen in the future. At this moment, Tanghua was looking at the conditions listed by the group of envoys. Princess, do you think this is okay? Hao Qi asked. He was just asking casually. The conditions here were enough to make Daki's emperor vomit blood, but they were still acceptable. Tanghua nodded. Add one more condition. Add what? When the group of envoys came, they came with the mission to ask for compensation from Daki. The power to decide on this matter was really in Tanghua's hands. Whatever she wanted to add, they discussed as much as possible. I was very dissatisfied with the fact that Daki matched me with an ugly girl. Now that everyone knows that this is my second marriage, it doesn't sound good. I'm afraid that it won't be so easy to find another marriage in the future. Hao Qi almost burst out laughing. How could that be? The princess was young, beautiful, and resourceful. She was well-versed in literature and martial arts. There were plenty of people who wanted the princess. Why would she dislike her? She was the one who despised other people, right? You had to Qi's emperor compensate me with a husband. That day, this consort happened to glance at the prime minister's son. He was rather handsome. Since Hellion Feng has given the prime minister's son to this consort as a gift, then this consort will do as he wishes and accept it. Hao Qi was at a loss for words. Who didn't know that the prime minister's son was the prime minister's precious treasure? If it really was a condition, that old man would probably jump up and beat him up. Princess, the chances of success are not high. Tanghua waved her hand nonchalantly. Whether it's successful or not, you could discuss it first. If the prime minister's son doesn't agree, 100 or 80 other handsome men will do. Anyway, the Qi's emperor has to compensate. Hao Qi. All right, he would give it a try. If Dachi could really compensate the princess's husband, then Dachi would lose face again. After the emperor read through all the conditions, he almost vomited blood. He had bargained a little for the first condition, but for the second condition, Princess Yuan wanted him to compensate her with a husband. She even said that the prime minister's son that Helian Feng had given her was acceptable. If the prime minister's son didn't agree, then he could give her 100 or 80 handsome men. 100 or 80 handsome men? It probably wouldn't be from an ordinary family. Then he might as well give up his position as emperor. The emperor thought for a while and could only summon the prime minister into the palace. Sure enough, that old man jumped up high, his beard curling up in anger. He almost pointed at him and scolded him. Dachi's emperor originally didn't want to raise Beiwang country. After all, they were equally powerful. But this time, the emissary group revealed something to him. It was about Beiwang country's power and that Beiwang country wasn't afraid of war. He was a little scared. If the two countries went to war because of Helian Feng, he would probably be scolded badly. Not only would he be laughed at, he would also be scolded for being muddle-headed. Therefore, the emperor complained to the prime minister with a pitiful face and even said that Princess Yuan specifically asked for the prime minister's son. In reality, the prime minister was overjoyed. On the surface, he looked angry. In the end, he sighed. "Your Majesty, how do you want to deal with Prince Ding? His son had to be sent, and Prince Ding had to be dealt with. He couldn't be short of benefits. Remove his title and deprive him of his permanent inheritance." The emperor also had his own intentions. He felt that with Su Ruiyu around, Helian Feng wasn't reliable. "Since your Majesty is so righteous, then I will go back and discuss with Changqiu," the prime minister said with a downcast face, as if he was a loyal official who had no choice but to sacrifice his son to save the country. Peak. Chapter 41-48. Not long after, news spread from the palace that Daki had to compensate the prime minister's son to appease Princess Yuan's anger. It is said that Princess Yuan wanted the prime minister's son because what Prince Ding did made her bitterly disappointed. She even said that since Prince Ding gave her such a big gift, she would not stand on ceremony for the friendship between the two nations. The prime minister's son is so pitiful. His body is already weak, and now he is implicated because Prince Ding was bewitched by the demon. The journey from Daki to Beiwang Nation is long. I wonder if the prime minister's son can withstand it. I heard that Princess Yuan does not need the prime minister's son. If it is not the prime minister's son, it is fine to compensate her with 180 aristocratic young masters. This news spread from nowhere. Not to mention the capital, it had already spread to other places. It would not be long before the entire Daki knew about it. If not for the Daki Emperor's announcement that day that Prince Ding and the demon would be thrown into jail, various places would have fallen into chaos. Daki was considered peaceful, and it would not be easy to cause trouble. However, those people were also observing. If Daki and Beiwang Nation were to become enemies, it would not be peaceful anymore. Therefore, Daki's emperor had no choice but to smile and send the prime minister over. If he did not hand over the prime minister's son, Tanghua would demand 180 aristocratic young masters. Everyone was afraid. After hearing that Ji Changqiu had agreed to this matter, all the aristocratic families sent over their best items. Even the emperor opened his own treasury and gave the prime minister's residence a death exemption gold medallion. Although the prime minister did not care about this item, the death exemption gold medallion was useless when the emperor wanted his minister to die. However, now that his son's future had been planned out, he was truly free of worries. Don't think that this matter is over. It's not over yet. The emperor only stripped Prince Ding of his title and his permanent inheritance rights. It was not painful at all. As for that Su Ryu, he knew that the emperor coveted the item in Su Ryu's hands. As long as Su Ryu was in Helian Feng's hands, the other party would be able to cause trouble. Once his son left, Daki would not be peaceful anymore. He was looking forward to who Daki would land in the future. Anyway, he was not on anyone's side. He could be a royalist and secretly cause trouble without any worries. The prime minister was overjoyed at the thought that he wouldn't have to be so fearful in the future. In front of outsiders, the prime minister was still frowning and slovenly, as if he had aged decades in an instant. The emperor knew that the prime minister was an old fox, but he was still a little worried about sending his son away. Although it's hard to guess what that old fox is thinking normally, he has indeed been wronged in this matter. The emperor sighed. I'm afraid that he will resent third brother very much. I hope that third brother will learn his lesson this time and not provoke this old fellow. This time, he had really offended the other party. The emperor decided to make it up to the prime minister. He really wasn't afraid that the other party's achievements would shock the emperor or anything like that. Now that his only son had been sent away, there was nothing for him to fear. Moreover, all of the prime minister's hatred was directed at Hellion Fong. As the emperor, all he had to do was to put up a good front. Hellion Fong was still in prison. Now that his title had been taken away, he knew that he had no chance of inheriting the throne. Vertex. Chapter 41-49. Although he was unwilling, he didn't do anything. If he showed any dissatisfaction, his father would suspect that he was ambitious. As long as Suruyu was around, some things could be slowly planned. He had his power and Suruyu's space, so there was no hurry. When he heard that Tangguo wanted the emperor to compensate her husband, Hellion Fong was furious. She divorced him first, and now she was making a cuckold out of him. No man could stand it. One day I, Hellion Fong, will flatten Beiwang country. Hellion Fong stared at the cell door and swore in his heart. On the other side, Suruyu's situation wasn't good either. Everyone said that she was a monster, so she was chained up all day long. The chains were 2 fingers wide, afraid that she would run away. If Hellion Fong didn't arrange for someone to send her a message, she might not have been able to hold it in and escaped. Hellion Fong told her to be patient for a while, and he would help her get back everything. He wouldn't let her suffer for nothing. Suruyu felt that Hellion Fong wanted to do something big, so she chose to stay. As the saying goes, one can only rise above others after suffering the most. One day, she would help Hellion Fong become the emperor of Daki, and they would flatten Beiwang country together. She would return the humiliation today tenfold. Tangguo leisurely leaned against the cushions in the carriage with her beautiful husband compensated by the emperor of Daki. She was facing Ji Chanxiu. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Tangguo asked. Ji Chanxiu shook his head. No. He couldn't tell that Tangguo was looking at him differently. He understood that he wasn't the only one who wanted to scheme against them. She was also scheming against him. In the end, of course, she won. Beiwang country's climate is actually very suitable for living. Daki is slightly drier, especially during the summer. It's hot and unbearable. Beiwang country is different. It's like spring all year round, and there are many mountains and rivers. It's not dry at all, and it's full of birds and flowers all year round. Ji Chanxiu smiled. I've read about Beiwang country in a journal. I've always envied that place. I didn't expect to have the chance to live there. Although you have married into my family, if you miss home in the future, I can accompany you back home. System, bastard host. Ji Chanxiu didn't know what to say. Earlier, he was still thinking that the only person he was worried about was his father, but Tangguo had already thought of his worries. He suddenly felt that God was actually very fair. He was given a body that was not very good, but he met the best person. Princess, I would like to ask you a question. Tangguo gently raised his eyes. You're already my son-in-law. If you want to ask anything, just ask. Princess, when did you start having feelings for me? Ji Chanxiu asked seriously, his eyes never leaving Tangguo's face. I also want to ask Prince Consort a question. When did you start to have feelings for me? Tangguo did not answer first, but asked instead. Ji Chanxiu was a little confused. I don't know either. One day, I suddenly understood that I have feelings for you. At that time, I was a little depressed and thought that it was impossible between us. Princess, it's your turn to speak. Tangguo sat up and said seriously, if I say it, would you believe it at first sight? Do you know that there's a phrase called sexual revolt? Tangguo asked 2 questions in a row, and Ji Chanxiu didn't know how to answer. The Peak. Chapter 41-50. He had long heard that Princess Yue was a straightforward person, but he didn't expect her to be so direct. Ji Chanxio suddenly thought of something and asked, "Princess, I heard that your condition is that you either want me or I'll compensate you with 180 beautiful men. Does that mean that 180 beautiful men is worth one of me?" He didn't feel good about it. "You've just become the prince consort, and you're already jealous?" Tanghua was amused. "If I didn't say that, people would think that it was because of you. Now that I said it, everyone would think that I was angry at Helian Feng's actions and made such a decision in a fit of anger. Then, the spearhead of this matter will be pointed at Helian Feng. Even if she left, she still had to teach Helian Feng a lesson, right?" Ji Chanxio thought that even a princess of Beiwang country was so powerful. If they were to fight seriously, Daki was indeed no match for her. "That means that the one in your heart is still me. What else do you think?" Steam rose from the tea on the table. Ji Chanxio's eyes carried a smile, and the corners of his lips rose uncontrollably. He hurriedly poured a cup of tea for Tanghua. That's good. This was the ending he hoped for. In the future, he would only have her, and she would only have him. A couple for life. This was the first time Ji Chanxio heard of it, not from Su Ruoyu, but from his parents. When he was young, his mother died of illness. Before she died, he remembered that his mother said to his father, "Why don't we break the promise of a couple for life? I won't be able to accompany you for that long." His father laughed and cried at the same time. "Since we've already made a promise, there's no reason to go back on it. Madam, you're the one who made me promise. Even if you die, you can't go back on your promise. Madam, do you know what a couple for life is? It means that the two of us can only have each other for life, and there can't be a third person. If you feel that you owe me in this life, then make it up to me in the next life. If you can't make it up in this life, then make it up to me in the next life. I hope that in the next life, I owe you 10 years. Then we can meet again in the next life. In the next life, you owe me another 10 years. Then in the next life, Prince Consort, what are you thinking?" Ji Chanxio snapped out of his daze and took out a transparent crystal. Tanghua recognized it at a glance. Wasn't this a crystal? Ji Chanxio grabbed Tanghua's hand and placed the crystal in her palm. "This is something my mother left behind. She said that if I was satisfied with my future fiancée and was willing to be with her for the rest of my life, I would give this to her. If the two of them didn't hit it off, they should break off the engagement as soon as possible so as not to delay each other. When I meet someone I like and am willing to spend the rest of my life with her, I will give this crystal to her." Therefore, if Suryu hadn't caused so much trouble when she came back, he would probably use his body's defect to ask the Su family to annul the engagement. No matter what, he would make her fall into a bad situation of having her engagement broken off. "Dear host," after scanning the crystal, the words "a pair for life" were engraved on it by a modern machine. Therefore, your adorable mother is most likely a modern person. She might be the previous female lead of this world. Tanghua's imagination ran wild. It wasn't like she hadn't met a transmigrator before, so she wasn't surprised at all. She clenched the crystal tightly and held Ji Chanxio's hand. The words on it are quite interesting. "Prince Consort, do you want to only have the two of us for the rest of our lives?" The Peak. Chapter 41-51. Of course. Tanghua smiled and interlocked her fingers with Ji Chanxio's. When they returned to Beiwang country, they were already holding each other's hands as they got off the carriage. Even though they were tired from the long journey, they were still smiling and there was no fatigue in their eyes. When Tanghua returned to Beiwang country this time, she was welcomed by everyone in Beiwang country. There was another piece of good news. Because of Tanghua's revelation, Daki had produced new crops. One of Beiwang country's conditions was to bring back 2 carts of crops. In addition, Su Ruyu's formulas were also in their hands. There were also some other benefits, but they did not ask for Daki's land. Daki's emperor could only reluctantly agree. Princess Yue had returned to Beiwang country and brought back countless good things. How could she not be welcomed? Tanghua didn't even summon the paper puppets back. When she left, she assigned them a task. They only needed to balance out the situation between the princes. If Helian Feng used his ultimate move, they were to help stop him and prevent him from succeeding. In addition, she assigned 2 bodyguards to protect the Prime Minister and Prince Zhong's family. Not long after returning to Beiwang country, Tang Gua and Ji Chanqiu were officially married. Ji Chanqiu looked weak, but he was actually a very talented person. However, this talented prince consort did not do much. He opened a tea house in the capital city and hired 2 storytellers to tell the stories he wrote every day. Later on, everyone realized that Princess Yuan liked to listen to storytelling. For some reason, the Prime Minister's son was given to Princess Yuan by Daki's emperor, but they felt that he was very nice. Gradually, they saw how loving the couple was, and their hostility towards Ji Chanqiu lessened. No matter where Tang Guo went, she would bring Ji Chanqiu along. The new crops they brought back were very good. The emperor of Beiwang country was thinking that if Daki offended him again, he would have a chance to send Hao Qi over to take advantage of him. Some people in Daki were not good, but they had good things. Over at Daki's side, although the prime minister was happy to see his son off, he was still very reluctant. His son had always been by his side. How could he not be sad when he suddenly left? He could tell that Princess Yuan was sincere towards his son, so he was relieved. The unhappy prime minister directed all his anger at Helian Feng. After Helian Feng was released, he ordered all of his spies to keep an eye on Helian Feng and cause trouble for him. Because Su Riyu's identity was exposed, the emperor had to put her to death again on the surface. After this time, Su Riyu really did not dare to show her original face. She simply brought a human mask. She disguised herself as a man and stayed by Helian Feng's side, helping Helian Feng train his subordinates. Helian Feng felt that the emperor really didn't want to pass the throne to him. Therefore, he planned to cultivate his own forces first. In the future, if the situation wasn't right, he would directly force the emperor to abdicate. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. Helian Feng had fought with a few of his brothers, but he had failed time and time again. In addition, there was also a prime minister who often found trouble with him, so his heart was filled with resentment. He finally decided to get rid of the prime minister. There's news from Daki. Chanqiu, take a look. Tanghua handed the letter to Ji Chanqiu. It's about father. Ji Chanqiu's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly took the letter and read it. When he saw the contents, he immediately stood up in worry. When he reached the end, he let out a long sigh. Gore, why are your letters always faster than mine? Tangwick thought of the pigeons that the prime minister raised. They were finally not fat anymore. She smiled and said, maybe it's because the pigeons are different. The Peak. Chapter 4152. I didn't expect Helian Feng to frame my father for betraying the country. He is really something. Of course, this plan failed. With the help of Tanghua and Papercut, it was impossible to succeed. Not only did it fail, but Helian Feng was also exposed. This made everyone's jaws drop. Framing a prime minister for betraying the country was no longer a simple matter. This time, Helian Feng was stripped of all his rights by the emperor and was confined to his residence. However, according to the news, Helian Feng had escaped. Daki's emperor ordered that Helian Feng was wanted throughout the country, dead or alive. Not only did Helian Feng escape, but he also escaped with Su Ruoyu. Chanqiu, go back and see your father. It's been a few years. It's time to go back and see him. He must miss you. She heard that Daki had produced a few new crops. This time, she was going to be the representative of the emissary group to ask if the emperor was well. Dear host, Helian Feng is currently in a village. This village is filled with his people. He is recruiting soldiers and buying horses. All the resources come from Su Riyu's space. Just now, I heard Su Riyu say that there isn't much spirit spring left in the space. Did she give up on giving Helian Feng more spirit spring? No, she wants the rebellion to succeed more than Helian Feng. After all, she hasn't had a good day in the past few years. Okay, when the spirit spring is used up, we will tell her the truth about Helian Feng. Tanghua and Ji Chanqiu returned to Daki. Almost all of Daki's citizens knew that Princess Yuan was representing the Beiwang kingdom. She hadn't arrived yet, but the entire Daki knew. When Daki's emperor found out, he didn't feel good. He wasn't afraid of Tanghua and Ji Changxiu, but he was afraid of some restless people who wanted to use this opportunity to make a fuss. Especially his unfilial son and Su Ryu, that evildoer. He didn't know what kind of trouble they would cause if they knew about this. Host, you are too evil. You purposely let Su Ryu know about you. This time, she will definitely bring people to kill you. What if she doesn't come? Even if she doesn't come, Hellion Feng will come. Killing you can start a war between the two countries. This is what he wants. Daki's citizens are so pitiful. Hellion Feng wants to put them in danger for his own selfish reasons. Once a protector, now a scourge. Dear host, we've all lived for thousands of years. I know very well what you're thinking. Stop pretending. Isn't this part of your plan? Ji Changxiu seemed to have understood something, but he didn't say anything. He was well aware of Tang's attitude. She would not really start a war between the two countries. As long as there was no war, anything was fine. Half a month later, Tanghua and the others had already entered the territory of Dachi. They really did encounter assassinations. Unfortunately, those assassins did not return. They were all captured alive. When the officials of Daki met them at the city gate, they were stunned to find some tied-up men in black following behind them. Greetings, Princess Yuan, Prince Consort. Daki's official felt that something was amiss, but he still braced himself to greet them. I won't be going to rest first. I want to see the Emperor of Dachi first. On the way, I've captured 30 villains who wanted to start a war between the two countries. As such, I intend to gift them to the Emperor of Dachi. Su Ryu did not come personally, but those who came were all elites under their command. On the way, Tanghua had already tricked them into revealing their identities. When the Emperor received this unusual gift, his expression was as ugly as it could get. When Tanghua mentioned that she was curious about Daki's new crops in the past 2 years, he could not hold back his expression. He gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. Unfilial son. After getting the compensation, Tanghua went to the Prime Minister's residence with Ji Changxiu. This time, she planned to stay here for 3 months. The Prime Minister was naturally happy. If not for his status, he would have moved to Beiwang country, especially when he saw that his precious son was in good health. The Prime Minister felt even more energized. He felt that he had made the right move. How much spring water do we have left? I'm afraid these people are not enough. After their previous failure, Hellion Feng and Su Ryu did not plan to provoke Tanghua again. They wanted to take down Daki first. Chapter 41-53. Hellion Feng and the others were not really planning to rebel. They were just training a group of people to break into the palace and capture all the important people of Daki. They were not afraid that they would not submit. Su Ruiyu's face was bitter. The spirit spring is almost empty. It can only last for half a month at most. It turned out that the spirit spring was not inexhaustible. But now she had no way out. After suffering so much, she wanted to turn over. She could not understand why she could not defeat a bumpkin. She even had a golden finger like the space. She once suspected that Tanghua had also been transmigrated, but the other party's performance was simply that of a native, not revealing any aura of a transmigrator. A modern person who grew up in the modern era would have some things that the ancient people did not know and some habits that were different from the ancient people. However, Tanghua didn't have any of these things. Su Ruiyu was even more unwilling. She had a golden finger, but she could not defeat a bumpkin. If she came out, she would be laughed at by the transmigrators. But don't worry. Even without the spirit spring, we still have the black soil. Eat the fruits and vegetables grown in the black soil, and it can also improve your internal energy. Su Ruiyu saw that Hellion Feng's expression was not good. Last time when they arranged for people to ambush Tanghua, they sent out a group of elites. There were about 40 people who were specially trained over the years. They did not plan to rebel. From the beginning, they planned to go for the elite route, so they did not train many people. Okay, there will be another palace banquet in a few months. At that time, all the important people of Daki will be at the palace banquet. As long as we control them, it will be done. Hellion Feng could not hold back anymore. If this continued, he would go crazy. If it was not for the fact that he could not find a time for those people to gather, he would have done it long ago. The palace banquet was the perfect time. After that, Daki would be his. They would no longer have to hide in this mountain village and live an ignoble life. After knowing that Suryu's spirit spring was about to run out, Tangwa decided to arrange for people to tell Suryu the truth. Suryu always felt that it would not be too bad if the spirit spring ran out in the end, because it was all to help Hellion Feng. He was her man and the only one who belonged to her. Moreover, after so many things had happened to her, Hellion Feng had never given up on her. She was very touched. Even if there were countless difficulties in front of her, she was willing to continue walking together with Hellion Feng. However, she really didn't expect that Hellion Feng would deceive her. It was true that Hellion Feng was impotent, but it was also true that it only worked on her. She obviously didn't want to believe this kind of truth, but this truth was something she accidentally heard from Hellion Feng's trusted aide. She was flustered and didn't know what to do. Of course, Hellion Feng noticed Suryu's condition and hurriedly asked her about it out of concern. Suryu did not tell the truth, and Hellion Feng did not guess that Suryu was out of her wits because of this matter. Tangwa decided to give Hellion Feng another big one. She arranged for someone to disguise themselves as a doctor and accidentally bumped into Hellion Feng. She could tell that Hellion Feng was sick and that the doctor could cure him. Although Hellion Feng was no longer so stubborn about the matters between men and women. However, he only had one woman, Suryu. He had to protect her well. What if something happened to Suryu? Knowing that his illness could be cured, Hellion Feng hurriedly asked for the doctor. After Suryu secretly heard it, her heart turned cold. Chapter 41-54. While the doctor was treating Hellion Feng, Suryu refused to take out anything from the space, including the things grown from the black soil. Hellion Feng suppressed the dissatisfaction in his heart and coaxed Suryu. Suryu finally couldn't help but ask Hellion Feng about his erectile dysfunction. She even angrily asked him why he lied to her. This time, Hellion Feng pretended to be innocent and said that everyone knew about it. He thought she knew too, so she didn't dislike him. Suryu was confused. Yes, everyone said that Hellion Feng was erectile dysfunction. Then why did you ask the doctor to treat you? Faced with Suryu's questioning, Hellion Feng still didn't panic and explained, "It's still an illness. I'm afraid that if I don't treat it, I won't be able to get close to you in the future. Since the doctor said it can be done, I want to try. Don't worry, I will only have you in my life." Under Hellion Feng's sweet words, Suryu chose to believe. Yes, Hellion Feng didn't lie to her. Everyone outside knew that the rumors had been spreading for so long. It was her own misunderstanding. Hellion Feng probably didn't say anything because she knew. Tangwa knew that Suryu was apologizing for this matter and even wanted to drain the spirit spring, thinking that she was incurable. Sometimes, women were so stupid. They didn't want anything but a man's sincerity. In the end, it was usually nothing. A man's sincerity could be obtained, but it was built when he didn't hurt her and she had confidence. In this world, how many women only wanted a man's sincerity and obtained happiness? She wasn't interested in Suryu's ending. She hated Hellion Feng the most. This man was a dog, a bitch and a dog. In order to achieve his goals, he would do anything. Who could be more ruthless than him? She wanted the doctor to cure Hellion Feng's illness, but of course, it was temporary. Hellion Feng's illness seemed to be getting better under the doctor's treatment. When Suryu wasn't around, he had the reaction of a normal man in the morning. Afraid that Suryu would be dissatisfied, he didn't find a woman to try. Actually, in his heart, he wanted to find a woman to try. On this day, Suryu drained the last drop of the spirit spring. When the spirit spring was taken out, she felt a vibration in the space and quickly wanted to go in and take a look. She didn't expect that she wouldn't be able to enter. She could only use her consciousness to observe the space. She saw that the black soil in the space had disappeared, and the thatched hut seemed to have disappeared. Suryu was stunned for a moment, and a burst of panic surged in her heart. She hurriedly put the barrel of spirit spring that she had just taken out into the space. However, even when the spiritual spring water was poured into the space, it did not change the situation inside. At this time, the space had turned into a desert. Only dust and sand filled the air. Everything that used to be here, including the things that Suryu put here, was gone. No, it should be said that they had been eroded by the wind. Suruoyu's hands were shaking. She inexplicably thought of a sentence in her mind. Water was the source of life. She had used up all the spirit spring water in the space, so this space was destroyed. Suruoyu cried anxiously. She quickly ran to the well and desperately poured water into the space. Unfortunately, no matter how much water she poured in, it was useless. The empty space was still a desert. The system couldn't see the situation in the space. After all, it was something made by a powerful person, and there were all kinds of enchantments and arrays inside. But seeing Suryu's panicked look and constantly pouring water into the well, it could guess some of the situation. Chapter 4155. It was most likely that something had happened to the space after the spring water was taken. Host, perhaps the black soil needed the spring water. Now that the spring water is gone, the black soil is probably gone too. Tangwood didn't know what would happen to the space. The person who created the space for living creatures wasn't simple. There were some special conditions for the space to be created. Suryu doesn't have any golden fingers. There's no need to watch this show anymore. Let's just wait for Hellion Foam to die. Suryu didn't know how much water she poured into the space, but it was useless. Hellion Foam knew about the changes in Suryu's space, and his expression was ugly. Now, no matter what was put in, it would disappear. Therefore, this space was useless. He comforted Suryu. Actually, at this time, Hellion Foam didn't notice that Suryu's importance in his heart had decreased. He had recovered and had so many elite subordinates. Suryu didn't have any space. However, to be safe, he didn't make any changes. He also suspected that Suryu was lying to him. In the end, when he saw Suryu's dazed look, he believed that the space was really useless. Now, Hellion Foam was ready to force her to abdicate the palace banquet. Suryu seemed to have grasped at a life-saving straw. She couldn't help but lower her voice when talking to Hellion Foam. She had no one to rely on now. She could only rely on Hellion Foam to stand at the top of the world and avenge herself. The two of them didn't pay much attention to these small changes. How could Tangwa miss such a fun event like the palace banquet? Therefore, she planned to stay for another month to attend the palace banquet. She said that it was rare for the prince consort to come back. Of course, she wanted to spend more time with her father. Ji Changxiu, his princess, is so scheming. Tangwood didn't hide the news that Hellion Foam wanted to extort a confession from her. Ji Changxiu also wanted to wait until everything calmed down before leaving. His father would also be at the palace banquet. He was worried. However, Tangwood thought that she was frightened at the palace banquet. Daki's emperor would probably give her something good to calm her down. Since she could get something from a transmigrator, why would she go through the trouble of taking it out herself? She felt much more comfortable in Daki. Sure enough, other people's things were better. System, so bad, as expected of its great host. On the day of the palace banquet, the Daki emperor was not in a good mood because Tangwa insisted on staying and even wanted to attend his palace banquet. How could he not know that Tangwa was still thinking about the other good things of Daki? It was a pity that Suryu and Hellion Foam had defected. Otherwise, the Qi would have more good things. Thinking of this, the emperor felt even worse. Not long after the banquet started, everyone who had eaten collapsed. Although Suryu had lost her space, the medical skills she had learned in the space were still there. It would be easy to concoct some colorless and odorless medicine, and everyone in Daki would fall victim to it. Of course, she had succeeded because Tangwa had gone easy on her. Hellion Foam appeared with his men and was about to capture everyone. At this moment, the paper human puppet hiding in the dark to protect Tangwa jumped out and quickly captured Hellion Foam and Suryu. In this way, it would be easier for her to gain favor in Daki. Since she helped to quell the chaos in the palace, The Emperor of Daki should take out the best things to thank her and help her get over the shock, right? Chapter 4156. Heli and Feng and Suruyu were unwilling to give up. They glared at Tangua with hatred. Tangua didn't even look at them and ordered people to restore the people present. The Emperor was furious and ordered people to cripple Heli and Feng and Suruyu's martial arts. He didn't kill them because he still wanted the things on Suruyu. Heli and Feng could use them to threaten Suruyu. After the palace banquet, Tangua returned with a full load. The Daki Emperor was so angry that his beard stood up. When Tangua left, the paper puppets that were arranged around the princes were also quickly removed. They were ordered to secretly protect the Prime Minister. The crippled Suruyu and Heli and Feng were secretly locked up. After a test, Suruyu said that her space was crippled. The Emperor naturally didn't believe her and locked them up together, interrogating them every day. When the new emperor ascended the throne, the two were pardoned and released. However, they still didn't have freedom and could only stay in a mansion. Heli and Feng, who had lost all hope, thought about that matter every day. As time passed, he wanted to taste other women. The new emperor agreed to Heli and Feng's request. He liked to see Heli and Feng struggle, so he sent many women to Heli and Feng. Suruyu made a fuss about it, but it was useless. However, good things didn't last long. One day, Heli and Feng couldn't take it anymore. He came to find Suruyu again, but he still couldn't. Heli and Feng completely collapsed. He and Suruyu tortured each other for a lifetime, because they couldn't escape. When the Prime Minister passed away, Tangua brought Ji Chancho back. They all knew that this was the last time they returned to the Prime Minister's mansion. When they found out that the Prime Minister was seriously ill, they returned. In order to catch up earlier, Tangua even secretly stuck a talisman on the horse to make it run faster. The Prime Minister laid on the bed with a benevolent face. He looked at Ji Chancho and Tangua and was very gratified. He made the right choice. His daughter-in-law was a good person. His son's health was getting better ever since he went to Beiwang country. He didn't let his wife down and wouldn't be blamed by her. He didn't know if she was waiting for him after so long. Chancho, do you still remember your mother? Ji Chancho said, Father, I remember. The Prime Minister nodded and smiled like an old child. It's good that you remember. Father wants to tell you a secret. Faced with the Prime Minister's mysterious appearance, Ji Chancho felt a little sour in his heart. Father, you're actually hiding a secret from me. Do you not treat me as your son? Brat, this is the only secret your father has kept from you in this lifetime. I originally wanted to take this secret with me to my grave. However, if I don't say it out loud, I've been holding it in my entire life. I've always felt uncomfortable. Ji Chancho understood. So, his father wanted to make him feel uncomfortable too? He was indeed his biological father. Father, tell me, your son is listening. The Prime Minister's eyes were burning. Your mother, this secret is about your mother. She's actually not from this world. This is a secret between me and your mother, and now you know about it. How is it? You didn't expect this, did you? Ji Chancho wanted to ask what was going on, but the Prime Minister closed his eyes with a smug smile. Stinking brat, go and think about it slowly. He won't explain it clearly. The Prime Minister closed his eyes happily, thinking about how to find his wife in his next life. What he didn't expect was that when he opened his eyes again, he would appear in a very unfamiliar world. He looked around in confusion. There were strange things everywhere. Young man, are you okay? The driver asked nervously and worriedly. This young man had been hit 2 meters high. Your head is bleeding. I've already called the ambulance. Hang in there. You mustn't fall asleep. The Prime Minister was still in a daze, but he understood. He didn't show it, and was about to say that he was fine when something suddenly surged out of his head. The pain was so intense that he couldn't hold it in and fainted. Chapter 4157. Margaret, it's a new world. It's coming to a new world. I'm looking forward to it. M-O-U-N-T-on. Margaret, are you tired? Zin. Margaret, I don't think you should be so excited every time, so there will always be no good news. Empress Dowager Chun. Maybe there's good news? Marguerite was right to think on the bright side. She shall, but she has never succeeded as long as she succeeds once. Margaret, apart from Empress Dowager Chun, do you need to sew up your mouth? It's your luck to be done by Margaret, the most beautiful and powerful magic wizard in the magic land. Haha, the mouth can't speak, it's all sewn up. Chi Xiao, I'm so scared, Zinha. Mo Yun Tian, she's mentally abnormal if she doesn't dream for a day. Empress Dowager Chun. Margaret, can you tell me about the magic world? Changing the subject, after staying in this group for so many days, Empress Dowager Chun feels that Margaret is really pitiful. But she is also curious about when the powerful school bell can come to her world. She used to think it was boring to be a living dead. Now it's different. She's looking forward to what will happen in the future. Tangua, don't you think you're too much? Why should you hide me and give all the resources to other people under you? They're all your artists. How can you be so disgusting? The woman in front of her is heavily made up. In fact, her appearance is still very beautiful, but her arrogant and ferocious appearance gives people a bad feeling. Isn't it just that I can't make money for you? So you don't want to help me? You agents are really snobbish. It's clear that I'm the best in your hands. I don't know what you think. After the woman scolded Tangua, she left through the door. Tangua, I'm going to change an agent. Don't regret it when I'm popular. Remember how you treat me today. You look down on people. One day, I'll make you unworthy for a lifetime. Tangua watched the woman leave through the door. She still didn't react. But from the words of the other party just now, she guessed the identity of the two of them. The other party should be a female artist, and she was the female artist manager? She just didn't know what type of female artist that woman was. Her physical appearance was okay, but she didn't take good care of herself. Even the thick makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. Her living habits were probably not good. His attitude was arrogant, and he didn't know how to deal with things well. It was normal for him to be disliked. But without looking at the memories, she decided not to think about it for the time being. She wanted to see who was right and who was wrong after looking at the memories. Tangua glanced around. There was no one around. She then checked her phone. There were no new messages. She locked the door and sat in her seat to accept the memory. This time, she was a manager. So far, the most popular artists under her were only C or D-list artists. A manager in such a situation was usually referred to as an 18th tier manager, the kind that had never made an artist famous. That woman was right. Out of the few people under her, in terms of appearance, the other party was indeed the most talented. However, whether it was Tangua or the host, the arrogant woman was not qualified to be an artist. Whether it was in terms of appearance, professional ability, or professional ethics, she didn't have any professional ethics. The host's tragedy was that woman. After a while, that woman's body would be taken over by another soul. Her life would change greatly, and she would kill her way out in the entertainment industry. And the host's manager, who had once frozen a female artist, became a thorn in the other party's side. Peak. Chapter 4158. The woman who went out just now was called Cheng Xian. Cheng Xian was very beautiful. She was tall, had fair skin, and a pair of big, watery eyes that could speak. After signing the contract with the company, she was assigned to work under the previous owner. At that time, the previous owner felt that she was lucky to be assigned to such a good newcomer. But in the current industry, there was no lack of newcomers with good foundations. Just because one was good in appearance, they would not be able to become popular quickly. After being assigned to Cheng Xian, the previous owner did come up with a series of plans to make Cheng Xian popular. Because she had been a manager for less than 2 years, she was considered a newcomer. The good artists were all snatched up at the beginning, and the rest were assigned to her by the company. Even if she could poach people herself, she had to have the qualifications first. Moreover, she was here to work seriously. For the time being, she did not want to use her other skills to deliberately make people popular. Yes, the previous owner was a manager with a background. She was in this industry because she liked it and wanted to personally make some artists famous. Even if the artists she was assigned to at the beginning were not good, she still seriously helped them plan. She was just a newcomer, so it was inevitable that she lacked experience. She could only take it one step at a time. Cheng Xian's appearance gave her a lot of ambition. She felt that she might have found a good steed. But this was not a good steed, but an ancestor who was difficult to serve. Cheng Xian came from an art school. She had the appearance that everyone loved. If someone liked her and was willing to spend resources on her, it was easy for her to become popular. But if she wanted to be popular for a long time, besides resources, she also needed her own ability. Cheng Xian was the kind of woman who did not have any resources or ability. She only had beauty. In the art school, she had always been the flower of the mountains in the eyes of her classmates. She had never been in a relationship. It would be wrong to say that she was reserved. She felt that those who pursued her in the art school were not good enough for her. Even if some of them looked good, they could not bring her any resources at all. The sons of rich families nowadays were all very cunning. It was harder to get something from them than to reach the sky. Cheng Xian had carefully looked into some of her pursuers. She found that these people looked good on the surface, but in reality, they could not control the financial power, not to mention getting her any resources. Therefore, she looked down on all of them. She had a plan in mind. Instead of finding a rich second-generation heir, she might as well find a rich first-generation heir. With a rich first-generation heir and a big boss, wouldn't she be able to get all the resources? After signing with the host company, her physical condition was too good. In the beginning, the company had planned to focus on training her and see how far she could climb. Cheng Xian didn't have any background or fame. She was still a newbie. It was impossible for the company to give her countless resources as soon as she came in. However, every newcomer had a certain chance. It was easy to get her some spots in the talent show. With the company's guidance, as long as she worked hard and performed well in the talent show, the company would help her promote. Cheng Xian was indeed very outstanding in her first talent show. Although she didn't get first place, she still got third place. After the talent show, the company made a series of plans for Cheng Xian. They also helped her buy articles and create hype. After that, she accepted another program for Cheng Xian. On this program, Cheng Xian became popular again and gained a lot of fans. Chapter 41-59. At this time, Cheng Xian was already a little smug. She felt that she was going to be a big star soon, so she was no longer as cautious as before. Coincidentally, the company gave Cheng Xian a role as the third female lead. This was a good role that the original host had gotten for Cheng Xian. Originally, the company had given it to the fourth female lead. Later, they felt that Cheng Xian had a lot of potential, so Cheng Xian went to play the third female lead. Everyone was satisfied, except for Cheng Xian. She felt that she could play the first female lead with her ability. Even if she couldn't, she could play the second female lead. Especially after she joined the crew, Cheng Xian found that behind the first female lead, there was a big investor. As for the second female lead, she was really from a rich family. At that time, she thought that she had worked so hard to climb up the ranks, but in the end, she was still the third female lead. She couldn't compare with those with powerful backgrounds, especially when she saw how the first female lead was treated in the crew and how the first female lead said some ambiguous words to her from time to time. She was very angry. From then on, Cheng Xian couldn't stay still. She was very jealous of the first female lead. She hated the first female lead the most. As for the second female lead, she kept a low profile and didn't like to cause trouble. Moreover, she was really from a rich family. Cheng Xian felt inferior in front of her and didn't dare to provoke her. What the original host didn't expect was that Cheng Xian would give a recording to the original host after filming. At that time, Cheng Xian's original words were, "Expose this to the public. See how arrogant the first female lead is in the crew. She even dares to hype up the title of the pure goddess. Let everyone see her ferocious face." Although the original host hadn't been a manager for long, she still knew the basic rules in this industry. There were many things in this industry that she didn't agree with, but it had become a special rule that not everyone could break easily. Moreover, she was personally promoting an artist. She was the kind of artist who would become famous in a down-to-earth way. She agreed to help promote her own artist. After all, artists needed popularity. But no matter how you promoted them, there should be a bottom line. If you have a bottom line, You shouldn't touch others' bottom lines. Cheng Xian's method was to smash the plate. There were many things that couldn't be kept secret. If she really exposed this recording, not only her, but also Cheng Xian couldn't survive in this industry. That female lead's attitude was a bit arrogant, but she didn't do anything particularly bad. If she did too much, her character setting didn't suit her. If it was exposed, it would mean that Cheng Xian had broken the rules. At that time, she would be blacklisted by the person behind the first female lead. Even the gods wouldn't be able to save her. He didn't have any background, yet he dared to slander him. If this wasn't smashing his own plate, then what was? When the host analyzed the situation with Cheng Xian, she didn't expect Cheng Xian to say, "Aren't you too afraid of trouble? You could just expose this thing secretly. Who would know that you did it? You're my manager. Can't you do something as simple as that?" The original host asked again, "Then, what benefits will it bring you after exposing this recording?" If this matter was exposed, it wouldn't do Cheng Xian any good, nor would it do any good to the entire crew. For the first female lead, her image would indeed collapse. However, they had a professional operation team. They could quickly find a reason to act pitiful and abuse their fans. Then, things would take a turn for the better. If this matter was found out, Cheng Xian would be finished. Chapter 4160. She was too naive. The power of capital was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Cheng Xian had no choice but to leave in a huff. Anyway, she didn't trust this manager. She felt that she had encountered a cowardly manager who refused to help her. After that, Cheng Xian secretly exposed the recording on the internet. However, it only took a minute for the recording to disappear completely. Without professional ghostwriters, it was easy for ordinary people to delete something that was exposed. Not only that, Cheng Xian's alternate account was also banned. Not long after, Cheng Xian heard that someone was asking about the recording. She was a little scared and didn't dare to do anything. In fact, she was even angrier. She felt that she wasn't popular yet because she lacked a big boss. During the break, Cheng Xian actually secretly looked for a big boss for herself. After the original owner found out, she was furious. She didn't want her artist to be like this. If the artist really met her expectations, she didn't mind using her background to negotiate for resources. When she first met Cheng Xian, the original owner even set a score for Cheng Xian. Once she reached the score, she could use her connections to help Cheng Xian get resources. However, she didn't expect Cheng Xian to be so impatient. She wanted to fly and reach the sky in one step before she learned how to walk. This kind of artist who didn't improve her professional skills and only wanted to ride on someone's coattails made the original owner very disappointed. She was also observing Cheng Xian's training. She talked to Cheng Xian about finding a big boss. Cheng Xian didn't agree with the original owner's view. She felt that this manager was obstructing her path. Others can't wait for their artists to have someone to support them. You're really different. You're as pure as water. Don't you know that fish can't be raised in water? The original owner had a headache. She warned Cheng Xian again and again, hoping that Cheng Xian would improve herself. She was very good. As long as she was good at martial arts, she would definitely be successful in 2 years. Cheng Xian heard that. 1 or 2 years. Did she know that some people could become popular in the country within a year after their debut? She felt that this manager wasn't reliable. She still needed to find a big boss for herself. Cheng Xian had been looking for one and didn't have a chance to do it. After her hard work, she did know some big bosses. Later on, she took a fancy to one that she thought was good. The two hit it off and went to a hotel. But this time, Cheng Xian walked into the wrong room and had sex with another man in the dark. After that, she looked at the unfamiliar faces and felt that she had suffered a great loss. She was afraid that someone would spread the news, so she quickly ran away. After Cheng Xian ran away, she thought about it later. How could anyone who could stay in that hotel be an ordinary person? He was filled with regret. When he went back to look for her, the place was already empty. What was even more unexpected was that Cheng Xian was pregnant. What was most inconceivable to the original owner was that Cheng Xian actually wanted to give birth to this child. She even told her that this child's identity was not ordinary and that the child's father might be very powerful. The reason why Qing Xian said this was because she had heard that the person who stayed in that room that day was indeed not a simple person. However, that person did not reveal too much to her. She thought that if she gave birth to a child, she might be able to marry into a wealthy family. Don't many female celebrities end up marrying into rich families? Qing Xian, who had just started her career, secretly gave birth to a child. Chapter 4161. The company was very unhappy, but they had no choice but to give away all the resources that were meant for Qing Xian to other people. It was worth mentioning that the movie that Qing Xian acted in was well received. She was the third female lead, and because this role did not require much acting skills, it did attract a wave of fans. There were still many fans who were asking about her whereabouts. After Qing Xian gave birth and returned, there were still a few fans who chose to support her. But there were new people in the industry every year, and Qing Xian lost her advantage and was no longer treated the same as before. The original owner still arranged jobs for Qing Xian. Unfortunately, Qing Xian was arrogant and offended people everywhere. She was also very jealous. Perhaps it was because of the child, she did not dare to mess around. She was afraid that one day, the child's father would come to pick her up and find out about her dark history and prevent her from marrying into a rich family. Because Qing Xian did not work hard and did not improve herself, the original owner almost gave up on her and waited for her contract to expire. The original owner did not want to arrange jobs for Qing Xian anymore. The company was already very unhappy with her and wasted resources on a useless person like Qing Xian. The original owner also felt that she had given Qing Xian enough opportunities and there was no need to waste her time on her. That's why Qing Xian came to cause trouble for Tangwa today. After Qing Xian left, she talked to the company about changing her manager. If they did not change her manager, they would terminate the contract. Oh, the company was waiting for this sentence. Now that Qing Xian had no value as an artist, it would be a stain on the company's reputation if she stayed. The company agreed to terminate the contract. Both parties terminated the contract peacefully. What happened next was not as good as Qing Xian thought. After hitting a wall everywhere, she smoked and drank at home. She also took care of the child, and because she had no money, she could not afford a nanny. Just as Qing Xian was thinking about whether to send the child to the orphanage, the real daughter of Luck transmigrated. She had the same name as Qing Xian and took over everything, including the child. The daughter of Providence who had transmigrated was the movie queen of a parallel world. She was the ancestor of the entertainment industry. Even though she was a single mother with a child, she was still able to make a name for herself in this industry. Not only that, she even reunited with the child's father and attracted that abstinent man. Although this daughter of Luck looked down on Qing Xian, she also hated people like the original owner who hid Qing Xian. She even said that she had already taken over the body of the original host. So of course she had to hold her head high for Qing Xian and make sure that the original host couldn't stay in this circle anymore. Sure enough, after Qing Xian gained power, she often used various reasons to snatch resources from the artists under the original owner. In the entertainment industry, it was very normal to fight for resources. The original owner was also very curious as to why Qing Xian had become a different person. However, she didn't think that Qing Xian had been betrayed. Perhaps this was the effect of the halo. The original owner later found a good seedling, but she still couldn't raise it because of Qing Xian's obstruction. Later, Qing Xian even spread a rumor saying that the host was suppressing artists and that no artist would have a good life in her hands. Actually, she didn't say it directly. It was her fans who came up with it. She had asked people to deliberately guide them. Wasn't that right? All the artists that came from the original owner's company did very well later on. That's not good. They had all been poached by Qing Xian, with all kinds of resources and an award-winning actress leading them. How could they not be popular? Chapter 4162. The better Qing Xian was, the more the netizens would scold the original host, saying that she was a hindrance to her artist's future. Many artists who had left her had said that she was indeed very strict with her artists. They didn't say anything bad about the original host. In fact, she wasn't bad at all. She was just too strict and didn't allow her artists to think about useless things. She hoped that they could develop themselves well. Her dream was to use her own ability to make the artists she approved of famous in this dirty industry. If these people were willing to wait, they might be able to see how she would grow with them. However, when the fans saw this, they would only think that she was a manager who was strict with her artists. She was even fired by the company because no artist was willing to be in her hands. In the end, the original host didn't achieve her goal of making an artist famous. She didn't fully implement her plan. She didn't use her own background. Because of the online violence, she even got depression. It was very serious, and she had to go home to recuperate. This was the regret of her life. Because of this experience, the original host didn't watch any shows or dramas for the rest of her life. She didn't even go online. It seems that this is a competition in the entertainment industry. After reading the memories, Tangwa understood that there was no deep hatred this time. The original host tragedy was that she was a little stubborn. The lucky girl who took over Chung Xian's body was a little conceited. To put it bluntly, the original host wanted to make the artist she wanted famous. Chung Xian wanted to stop this because of the original Chung Xian. Then, what she wanted to do was simple. She wanted to make all the artists in her hands famous. Otherwise, Chung Xian would have her way. If there was a chance, she would personally help the artists under her to snatch Chung Xian's resources. This was the entertainment industry. Wasn't fighting for resources to see who had the ability. It's so good to be a rich second generation. Tangwa sighed. I have money and connections. System, why is the host so depraved? What happened? Tongzi, help me say hello to everyone in the group. I want to see who the artists in my hands are first. Tangwa pulled out the artist's information. She had 3 artists in her hands, and they were all very young. 2 of them had been with her for a year. Their development wasn't very good, but they were good in their own fields. However, they weren't very talented. In other words, they weren't outstanding in terms of appearance and personality, so their development wasn't very smooth. Their names were Jiang Qiqi and Yu Jiwei. Both of them were in their early 20s. They had already played some small roles and didn't have many fans. As a female artist, Jiang Qiqi's looks were indeed not outstanding. Even if her acting skills were not bad, it would be difficult for her to attract the attention of the audience when it came to looks. If she were to be the second female lead or the first female lead, she would definitely be criticized for her looks. Under normal circumstances, the first female lead, second female lead, and even the third female lead in a TV drama were all very good-looking. As a result, it was very difficult to find a suitable role for Jiang Qiqi. In terms of appearance, she was always at a disadvantage. Most importantly, she was quite tall. At 1.7 meters, she was a little tall for an actress and wouldn't be easy to work with. But she wasn't tall enough for a model. As for Yu Jiwei, he wasn't handsome enough. He really wasn't handsome enough. His facial features weren't flat, so he didn't leave a good impression on others. Yu Jiwei was especially unlikable in the circle of little fresh meats and delicate faces. Chapter 4163. The host groomed these 2 seriously and tried her best to get them resources because they were really hard-working and loved this industry. Even if their looks weren't outstanding, she was willing to take them on. She felt that if she kept going, she might be able to groom these 2 into future old artists. As the saying went, if they were popular actors or not, they would always be able to find a suitable script. The third artist was called Hele. He was handsome and was 1.8 meters tall. The host had just taken him on last month. Hele's appearance was quite outstanding, but then again, which young man in this circle didn't have an outstanding appearance? Even if the audience didn't like the current young actors, they would definitely be the most eye-catching one in the crowd. Hele was currently participating in a talent show, and his progress was all right. Because he didn't have a background, he couldn't bring any resources and could only do things step by step. Originally, Hele's popularity had soared because of this talent show, and he had managed to get a good role in a few months. Helei's hard work and the host's teaching of Helei's professional skills. During the audition, the director personally decided on the role. But the real Cheng Xian came over. She also used her skills to get a role in that show and had a scene with Helei. During the official filming, she purposely suppressed Helei's scenes, causing the director to call for a stop. In the end, he felt that this young man couldn't make it and replaced him. Because of this, Helei was mocked by many people. Not long after, he would be dragged out to be whipped. He had just entered the industry, and he was hit. Helei's confidence was hit. After that, a series of other things happened, and they were all related to Cheng Xian. Helei couldn't stand up anymore. Even if the host encouraged, comforted, and persuaded him, she couldn't help him regain his confidence. Later on, he slowly withdrew from everyone's sight. Tangwa looked at the three's information because when she was being scolded by everyone, they were the only 3 artists that spoke up for her even after they left the entertainment industry. She was already planning what kind of plan to groom them. She was good at spending money, and she wasn't trustworthy. She couldn't spend enough money to groom a few future old artists. She also had all sorts of talents and acting skills. When the time came, she would personally teach them and force them to become best actresses. There was no doubt that Helei's conditions were the best. Whether it was her appearance or her talent, she was very good. It was not difficult for her to make Helei famous. Since she knew that the 3 of them were loyal, she could use the resources in her hands to pull strings for them and raise them up as soon as possible. The more difficult ones were Jiang Qiqi, who was about 1.75 meters tall and didn't look as outstanding as most female celebrities, and Yu Jiwei, who wasn't handsome enough and always left a bad impression on others. There was no shortage of handsome men and beautiful women in the entertainment industry. In fact, if one was ugly, it could create some discussion. If one had that opportunity, it might even make one's career smoother. The scariest thing about being in this circle was that there was nothing special about it. If there was no special appearance or personality, the audience would not remember it. No matter how good the acting was, if there was no outstanding character, the audience would always feel that you looked familiar, but they would not pay too much attention to you. Chapter 4164. All of these were the reasons why companies would give every artist a persona that the public would like when they debuted. A persona that everyone liked was to let the audience remember him from the beginning. If an artist wanted to become popular later on, they had to rely on their skills. Otherwise, they would always rely on their past achievements. Without skills, it was easy for them to rebound. Companies only cared about whether the artist made money or not. Basically, they would not consider the artist's future. The original owner did not want her artist to be a flash in the pan, so she insisted on her own way of thinking. She also understood that everyone had their own ambitions. So, when some artists were not willing to be in her hands and were replaced, she did not stop them. For example, Cheng Xian was a typical example. Tang would kept thinking about how Jiang Qiqi and Yu Jiwei would develop in the future. She had already made a preliminary decision. As for Helei, he was still participating in a talent show. Before the show ended, she did not want to arrange anything else for him. He had good conditions, so he could be free for a while. After thinking about it, Tangwa called Jiang Qiqi. Jiang Qiqi had just finished filming a small role in a drama, and there were no suitable roles for her at the moment. The main reason was that Jiang Qiqi had been with her for a year. If she played a small role that did not improve much, the original owner would feel sorry for Jiang Qiqi's hard work. So, she wanted to fight for her to see if there were any suitable roles for her or other shows. Sister Tang, Jiang Qiqi received Tangwa's call and called her sweetly. She really felt that her manager was very good. The most she told her was to work hard and improve her professional skills. In this industry, she had too many managers who were just pimps for their artists. Sister Tang, do you have a new job? Although Jiang Qiqi was resting, she was not idle. She was currently reading at home, studying her acting skills, and watching some classic dramas. Tangwa, Qiqi, are you free today? Yes. Okay, come over in the afternoon. I will wait for you at the company. There are some things I want to discuss with you. Jiang Qiqi happily agreed. Tang will want her to go to the company, which meant that she was going to start work. Tang Wu then dialed Yu Jiwei's phone number. Yu Jiwei quickly picked up. Sister Tang? Xiaoyu, do you have any plans in the afternoon? No, Sister Tang. Are you going to arrange a new job for me? Yu Jiwei's situation was similar to Jiang Qiqi's. He knew that, with his condition, there was no way for him to be popular. All he could do was to seriously hone his acting skills. At the very least, when it came to roles that suited him, the director would pick him. However, his appearance wasn't good enough, and he was always overlooked. He didn't know why, but he just lacked something and couldn't act as the second male lead, let alone the male lead. For a male lead role, one had to have outstanding looks, background, or experience. It wasn't his turn. Come over in the afternoon first. I have some other ideas. Okay, Sister Tang. I'll come over after lunch. At noon, Tang Wu ordered a takeout and settled down in Xiao Xiao's office. Not long after eating, she received a call from the company. She guessed that it was because of Cheng Xian. As expected, Cheng Xian asked the company to change her manager. If they didn't change her manager, she would simply terminate the contract. As her agent, Tang Wu naturally had to go and take a look. The termination of the contract went smoothly. Tang Wu had no intention of persuading her. Whether it was the company or the host, she had done everything she could for Cheng Xian. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.